Okay, ladies and gents, so here we go. Thank you for joining us. If you've seen or heard John before at the seminars, you'll know what to expect. And if you haven't, then you're in for an absolute treat. Just in case you don't know, John is the president of the Society of NLP. He's probably forgotten more about NLP and NLP in business than I will ever learn. So it's an absolute pleasure to have him here this evening, talking about all things to do with NLP and business. We've got some great questions that have come in from you guys prior to this. I'm going to try and work through as many as we can get through before we tire John out or before he gets fed up with us. And we'll see where it goes. So John, how you doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, it's good to see you. You're looking well.
Thank you. Yeah, good to be here, of course.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for making yourself available. That's really cool. So you want to say anything, or should we just get straight on with the questions?
Let's get straight on with the questions. What's to say, except it's good to be here, of course.
Brilliant.
And I've done a number of webinars so far. And I'm going to say right out the gate here, you have got some of the best questions that I've seen so far.
Yeah. Well, there you go. We'll work our way up to some of the slightly cheekier ones, I think. Okay. It's good. Is Kathleen within earshot?
What's that?
Is Kathleen within earshot of you?
What do you mean?
Can she hear you?
No.
I'm just thinking about that one question that came in and whether you're going to.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, no, that's a great question. That's one of my favorite ones.
Okay, well, we'll get to that one later. So
Sure.
I'm going to go with an easy one. So the first question, is there a particular technique from NLP that you find most effective in business? If so, what is it? And can you give us an example of when you've used it?
Well, I have to tell you, this is one of my favorite questions because I've gotten it so far on just about every webinar I've been on. And I'm going to talk about techniques, but first we're going to talk about skills. So I'm going to explain the following thing to everybody who's on. Some of you heard this before, but that's okay. And so NLP is really made up of two different basic parts, let's say. One are the basic skills of NLP, and the second one are the techniques. And the reason I explain it that way is because a lot of people, they're so used to teaching techniques because they're easy. And I'm going to tell you about techniques. The techniques work every single time until the first time they don't. Then what do you do next? So we prefer to teach skills first and then put a bunch of skills together in order to make a technique so we can show you how you use the different skills. But the best part about the skills are that you can make up your own techniques as you need them. That's the best part. Let me give you I'll give you a middle metaphor for this. If I were to teach you how to bake a chocolate cake, let me tell you what, you would be able to make the best chocolate cake out of anybody on the planet. But if somebody came to you and said, oh, can you make me an pineapple upside down cake? You wouldn't necessarily know what to do because I never taught you to make a pineapple upside down cake. So what do you do now? However, if I teach you about all the ingredients, temperature, humidity, timing, even elevation, because in some places, if you're higher up, you got to bake a little bit differently if you're going to bake things. If I taught you all of those things, and then as an example, taught you to make a chocolate cake, you'd still be able to make the best chocolate cake. And if somebody came to you and said, hey, I want a pineapple upside down cake, you'd be able to make that too. So the best part about what we do is we teach the skills. Let me tell you a little bit more. Some people claim they've discovered new things in NLP. They haven't discovered new things. Mm-hmm. There are no new basic skills as far as I can tell. Richard and John, they pretty much covered them all. No joke. We're talking skills. In other words, if I taught you how to swing a hammer, and I taught you 18 different ways of swinging a hammer in order to get that nail in the wood, you're going to be able to swing a hammer, okay? But if I only taught you one way to swing that hammer, you're going to be in trouble if you're going to be on the job. They've covered all the basic skills. The only thing that somebody could possibly come up with is a new combination of the skills, and therefore they name it a technique. But even most of the techniques have been covered. So, if you learn the basic skills, you ought to be able to do a lot of other things. So there's no favorite technique that I have. Mm-hmm. There's no particular technique I can think of that I said, well, what's really contributed a lot to some of my success or whatever the case is. And I'm not even sure I would call it a skill. But I guess the thing that's gotten me as far as I've gotten is I'm a what you see is what you get kind of guy. I don't cover it up. This is me. I tell people I'm from New Jersey, get over it. I have that accent, the whole thing. And I've had a lot of success too. So I got a lot of experience in business, loads and loads of it. So there's no one technique, good skills, the basic skills, the language skills, knowing the representational systems. What do you do with eye accessing cues? anchoring, things like this. Knowing how some modalities work, even with language, so you don't have to ask somebody to make the picture bigger and things like that. Those are the things that I would regard as some of the basic skills, and there are probably a few more too. You learn those skills, basically you can do what you want. You can get away with just about anything that's going to move everybody towards success. So that's I guess the best NLP technique I have is me.
I would agree. And I've heard this question asked many times in seminars. What's the best technique? And I've heard you, and I've heard Kathleen, and I've heard Richard say the one that works.
Yeah. I mean, and that's based on skills again. So when it works, people will call me up, they'll email me and say, what do you think of this technique? I don't know. Have you done it yet? And they go, no. I go, then go try it out. If it works, it works. Mm-hmm. So
I mean, is there a time when you kind of, if you look back, you think, yeah, actually, that was a really good time when I used whatever it was, and I got a great result in business?
Let me think about that for a moment. I think probably a couple of things. One of them is, I guess, I don't know how to word this properly for you, but I'm still in New Jersey here, so I'll word it the best way I can, and I'm not trying to offend anybody. But it's usually based on some of the times when I've gotten a lot of success was in a meetings kind of stuff, and calling bosses on their own bullshit in front of their employees, because most people wouldn't do that. But I warned the boss ahead of time before we go into the meeting. And I asked the boss, and I say, listen, you're going to come in? Are you going to join the meeting? They say, yeah, sure. And I go, okay, and we'll warn you something. Let me warn you. I got a lot of information about you from other people. And that doesn't mean that it's right or wrong, but it is their perception. So I'm going to warn you now. If you step out of line in the meeting, I'm going to call you on it. Because I think your people need to call you on it more. I'm not just picking on you just to pick on you, although it is fun. But because it's you're not working with your people enough, and they know it. And so they're not willing to tell you. So, and the other thing is, by the way, if I ask the question and you throw your answer out on the table, I'm going to tell you to shut up. Mm-hmm. I might be nice and say, be quiet, but otherwise you're shortening everybody else's decision strategies and willingness to participate. But I'm going to do that. And that's why you pay me in advance.
So that's a tip in itself, isn't it? Yeah?
Well, it is. It's you have to do it gingerly. I'm not, I'm not always that cold with them, but I have been at times.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to jump to one of the more cheeky questions that we got sent in.
Sure.
I think you know which one this will be. Do you and Kathleen ever try to use NLP to get one over on each other? And if you do, who wins?
Well, let me answer the second half of the question just to start off with. She wins all the time. She's always wins. And then the other thing is, of course, if I've gotten caught a lot, and even though I can notice if she's doing it, I don't say anything. It is fun, we don't do it so much anymore, but every now and then, she's much more subtle than I am, of course. I tried a couple of different things. Had nothing much to do with NLP, but a long time back, my dad was, my sister called me and says, your dad's, I think he's losing it. I said, oh man, come on, he's lost it years ago. I don't mean his mental, he just didn't care about stuff. He was just tired of dealing with everybody. And I said, what's the matter? She goes, I think he's going deaf. I said, oh. She goes, I think you should take him out for lunch. He's going deaf, and not only that, but he talks to himself out loud, when there's nobody around. And I went, okay. So I thought, all right. I took him out for lunch, and as I'm driving with him, I lowered my voice. I have the radio on, and I said to him real low, I said, so Dad, would you like to have some, want to have some lunch? Yeah, let's have lunch. I went, okay. I said, how about, do you want to have some Italian food or some Chinese food? He said, oh, Chinese food. I love Chinese food. Let's go for Chinese food. And I looked at him. I said, Dad, the family thinks you're going deaf. He said, I know. I said, you do? He said, yeah. I said, they say to talk to you and you don't like respond. He said, I know. And I said, you do that on purpose? He said, yeah. I said, they also tell me that you argue with yourself out in the kitchen when you're cooking and things, and they call you and they talk to you and you ignore them. He said, you do that too? Yep. I said, so let me see if I got this right. And when they come into the kitchen, then, you're not talking to them, right? You don't ignore them? He said, yeah. I said, what do you do that for? He said, so they'll leave me alone. And I started thinking about this. So I got home, and I wait a while, and I'm in the kitchen cooking. Kathleen says, honey, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't answer her. She came in the kitchen and she said, listen, I already know what your father's doing, okay? Don't even think about it, all right? When I ask you a question from the other room, I expect an answer from you. And of course, I gave her the royal thing. I said, yes, dear, and that's the end of that. So, yeah, it's fun. No, it's fun more than anything else. So she's really exquisite. And if you want another answer to that question, then you have to ask her.
We will do one day. We will do.
Sure, I'm sure.
And I don't know if you can see the comments that are coming in, but there's quite a few
I can see. Ladies. I should look at some of them.
Yeah, quite a few from the ladies on that one. So Lucy, I think you're absolutely. So Lucy said that you have a happy wife, you have a happy life.
Hey, no kidding, man. Listen, I go to the supermarket and I buy things, and sometimes they look at me like, "What are you buying that for?" And I just look at them and I go, "Happy wife, happy life." And they go, "Oh, can you tell my husband that?" I go, "Yeah, sure. Where is he?" And it's true. You got to listen. If you're going to be in a relationship, So, I was telling people in one webinar about, I said, they're asking the question about how do you get by in this pandemic thing, whatever. And I said, oh, it's real easy. I said, you got to get along with everybody you're holed up with. If you're locked in your house with your spouse and your kids, you better learn to be entertained really easily.
Yeah.
And I said, and some of the women, by the way, some of the women are going, oh, my gray hair's showing. What am I going to do? And I said, so what? If your husband can't, he already knows you got grays because you go to the salon every week or 2 weeks and get your hair fixed up. No big deal. You're worried about gray hair? Look at this, And what's the big deal? It shouldn't be a big deal. You've been living together. You're married together. You've been together for how many years? And you got kids in the house. But yeah, happy wife, happy life. No kidding around. And but that's on both sides, by the way. Somebody said, "What's the best part about marriage?" I said, "The best part is negotiating."
Yeah, well, I'm sure you learn to do that very quickly with someone like Kathleen.
Well, you learn to do it very fast if you want to be happy. But by the way, I don't know. I guess different people are different. Who knows? I don't know.
That's cool. There you go. Ooh, John, you still there? You're frozen.
So to me, it's it really is.
Yeah, cool.
You still got me? I'm getting an unstable.
You froze for a second. That's cool. Okay.
We good?
Yeah, we're good. So we had a lot of questions came in around the theme of strategies, and I think the question that people want to ask was this. So there's a lot of people out there trying to use strategies in business, but they struggle to elicit strategies from other people when they're talking to them, whether it's a customer, a client, a colleague, an employee, or whatever. So what tips or what advice would you give them to help them get better at noting or eliciting other people's strategies?
Yeah, stop eliciting strategies.
All right.
There's nothing wrong with it, but you know what? It's number one, it could be very time consuming. Number two, if you don't elicit them right, you're going to be working your tail off. And I know there are people out there, I can even name some that go, well, I elicited this strategy and that strategy. They haven't elicited strategies because I know the level of skill they're at. For the most part, you don't have the time. You don't even have the time to elicit strategies that you want. You can find strategies instead of asking for them. Most people don't know how to even ask for them. And not only that, then you got to notate them so you know what's next and what's next and what's next. But you can always, there's enough information. If you want to know more about a person, the best thing to do is get them talking about themselves a little bit.
Yeah.
And don't be asking so many questions, really. When it comes to buying strategies and all these kind of things, you might trip on a strategy maybe, but I'm going to tell you, there's much easier ways of doing it now. Especially today. Today, people they're into this instant gratification thing. The internet's kind of spoiled everybody. And there's nothing wrong with that, except now you got to be faster in your mind. You got to be faster at your output. And the second thing is you can't stay in your head trying to figure anything out. So one of the problems with strategies, not that there's anything wrong with them, is by when you're eliciting them, either you're taking notes out here like this so you can keep track, or you're keeping track in here. When you're going to try to keep track in here, guess where you're not? You're not out here. And the person is out here in front of you. And the moment you go inside and try to think about something or think of something, you're not out here and you're going to miss what's next. So strategies are great. I don't care what anybody else tells you about them. And strategies also, by the way, are not necessarily context dependent, but let's say buying strategies. Somebody might have a strategy for buying a car. It might be similar for buying another big ticket item, which could be a home or something like that. And of course, the criteria is going to be different. However, then there are little ticket items. So if you want to study a little bit strategies, first try to notice what you can notice about strategies non-verbally. You know, go to the supermarket and follow somebody around. Some places might call that stalking, but just don't get so close to them, you know, and just follow them around and watch what they do. Sometimes they'll pick up something like that. They'll look at, pick it up off the shelf. They'll look at it. They might read something on the label, and then they might decide to put it in their cart. Now, that doesn't give you the whole strategy, but it gives you an idea. And you could do this from behind them, by the way. Just watch how they're moving their head. When somebody's going to do eye accessing and they're going to do this and this and this, their head's going to move as well. So that's a little bit of a challenge, but you know what? It's a good way to practice. And then they might pick up something else, and they might not do the same strategy. In other words, they take something off the shelf, they look at it, they don't even look at the thing on the label anymore in the back. They look at it, and they put it back on the shelf. Now, that's not going to give you the whole strategy, of course, but it's going to tell you it's a different strategy than what the one was before that one. And that's important. So problem with strategies is you got to keep track of all those things. And sometimes you have to ask for the information twice. I know that back in the 80s, we were teaching some strategy things, and one of the companies was Mercedes. But Mercedes-Benz was a very interesting company. I mean, and I like them. But if you walked into a dealership, okay, this craziest thing was, even today, if you walk into a car dealership, you're not there because you want to buy apples. You're interested in a car. Whether you're going to buy one that day or not is something different. But you're interested in a car, or you wouldn't be walking into a car dealership and spending your time there. Now, most people, and I do this regularly at the car dealership, the same car dealership I've been going at for 30 years, and they still do the same thing. Of course, I've never trained them, but still. I walk in and they look at me like who's going to be, you know, most dealerships, they have what's called one up. So the next, you know, customer walks in, who's ever the salesperson next, they take that customer. That's usually the way it works. But the funny thing is, if you walk in, I shouldn't tell you to do this. If you walk in and you see one of the salespeople that's one up, walk towards you, turn away and walk towards another one. And then you'll see like a dog fight going on, but it's unspoken. You won't see what's going on, but the other guy's going, "Hey man, it's mine," you know, blah, 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 you know, but I didn't do that. But, so when you walk in a Mercedes thing, right, they wouldn't do anything. Okay. They would just stand there and they'd watch you. And they'd wait until you did something, some behavior. You went from this car, then you went to that car. Because a lot of people don't want to be attacked when they walk into a dealership, for example. There used to be, there's still I think it's still in New York, a clothing store called Barney's. There's 5 floors of, you know, one floor was swimwear, one floor was, you know, leisure wear, sportswear, you know. And when you walked in, the first thing they did when you walked in was they gave you a badge. And they said, "Put this on so you don't get attacked." They had 18 guys, 18 salespeople on each floor, so to speak. They gave you a little button, a badge to wear that said, "I'm just looking." And then nobody would bother you as long as you had that badge on. But if you took that badge off, oh my gosh, you were going to be eaten up. You had to choose which one you were going to work with, because they'd be on you like, you know, like vultures on a. Anyway, so Mercedes, the guys would stand there. This is what we told them to do, because they said, you know, we want to elicit their buying strategies. And I said, well, you're wasting your time, but you can do it, but you've got to have a reason to ask them. Now, that's the most important thing. You got to have a reason to ask them. If you don't tell the person why you're asking for their strategy, not you're going to say, "Hey, I need to elicit your motivation strategy, blah, 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 so I can, you know, get you to do things better at work." That's not going to work. So Mercedes guys, they'd stand back and they'd watch. So you go from this car to that car and then back to that car again. Then they'd walk over to you and they'd make a comment, which is more like a question, but it's not even a question. They'd make a comment. They say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I noticed you went from the sedan to the coupe and back to the sedan again." And they'd wait. And you feel obligated to respond. So you'd say, "Well, yeah. I like the leather seats in that one. I like the radio in that one. I like I like that color, blah, blah, blah." You give them all your criteria anyway. Now, sometimes they would ask, "Well, what are you driving now?" And you tell them what you're driving now. And some of them would ask, "How did you decide to buy that car?" Now, I asked them what kind of response they'd get. Most of the time, they said almost like 70% of the time, they go, "I don't know." Okay. "I don't know," which means that their strategies are unconscious to them. They're not conscious. So that's the other problem with strategies, you see. So instead of asking all the steps of the strategy, most people, there's a difference between the unconscious and the conscious, what's going on in your brain. I'm going to explain those real fast. Conscious is what you are aware of, and unconscious is what you're not aware of. Okay. And these things flip around every minute of the day, every second, probably. Who knows? So if you're not aware, like right now, you're all sitting somewhere and you're looking at the computer screens and things. And I could probably tell you with reason, right now, you're not aware what your feet feel like on the floor until now when I mentioned it. But some part of your brain is taking care of that, but that's in your unconscious. Now, the other thing is once I say that, now that's brought to your consciousness. So now you're aware of what your feet feel like on the floor right now, okay? This goes on regularly. Now, a lot of people may or may not be aware of how they decide to buy something, for example. So you could ask them, well, how'd you decide to buy that? They'll say, I don't know, I just liked it. You know, they're going to get right to the end of the strategy, and that's what they're going to say. So now you got to go to work. So strategies, they're much more important things you can ask them and get for the information if you want to be able to influence and persuade them.
Cool. Sounds sensible. Sounds reasonable. Okay. Let's see. What was the next question? Oh yeah. So on persuasion engineering, I heard Richard talking about inoculating against objections, but I didn't really understand that. So can you explain it?
Wow, you didn't even come to the seminar? You want me to explain it all over again? Oh, man. All right. One of the ways, first of all, let me talk about objections for a minute, okay? Let me address that whole issue of objections. If somebody's giving you objections, number one, they're not saying no. They're saying, solve this problem for me. I cannot be any clearer than that. If they're not interested, they're going to say, no, thanks. But if they say, well, the price is too high, they're not telling you no, they're saying, solve the problem. If they're saying, well, you can't get it to me in the timing I want it to get, I want it in, solve the problem. They're not saying no. No means no, okay? The other part is, if you're not getting some at least questions, I'm not going to say that you should be getting objections, but if you're not getting questions even, there's something wrong. They're not engaging with you. They're just going to sit like this and listen to you. And you're not getting a response. If you're not getting a response at all, then you got other things to be doing. So the inoculation part is one of the things we talk about. And what it means is if there's an objection that you hear a lot, that means it's almost systemic. It's either going to be systemic because there's something you're doing, and I've done this myself, made mistakes, of course, or it's inherent either in the industry or the company that you're working with. So for example, IBM, for example, years and years ago, and I don't know how it is today, but I'm going back into the 80s, early 90s. If you had to call IBM or any of the big companies like this, you didn't get the same customer service person all the time. You didn't know who to ask for. You couldn't ask for Sally just because you spoke with Sally the last time. So one of the complaints they were getting all the time is you couldn't reach the person who could help you the best because you already told them what your problem is. Now you got to call somebody else and get you got your problem all over again. So the objection basically was they're too big. They're too big. You can't deal with them, yada, yada, yada. Well, they finally changed it around after a while so that they gave you, this is your customer service representative. So when you need to, if you're a consumer, basically, and you need to make a call because you're having a problem or something, in your computers or whatever the case was, you could call Sally. Now, there's a couple of things I can tell you about. One is if there's an objection you're getting regularly, okay, you might first want to notice if there's something you're doing that raises that objection in the person. This is important. You may not know you're doing something wrong. So if there's something you're doing that's basically really eliciting that objection, stop. Just stop. It's like nothing like saying, well, yeah, oh, that's a great product. I love that product. Oh yeah, we can get plenty of those, but I can't get them to you till about next month sometime. Well, guess what? You just fielded, or you primed, basically, you've kind of seeded the objection. Okay, that's one. Number two, if it's company related or if it's industry related, I would tell people the following thing. There's a couple of ways of handling inoculation. First of all, if it's person to person, just tell them right up front. Say, this is what you might object to, and here's the reason not to. Okay, a lot of people used to call me here at IBM, and they thought they would have to get a different person all the time, but that's not true. I'm your customer service representative, and here's my formula. Here's my here's my phone number, here's everything else, and I'm the one you contact. So write my extension down. As a matter of fact, I'll even send it to you in a mail. Now, that objection goes away. But this is for people who would normally raise the objection. Now, if it's company related, you've got to be able to deal with it. If it's industry related, good luck. The real estate, any contractor, my gosh, can hardly get any contractors that they answer the phone and they say, I'll come by and give you an estimate. You're lucky if they ever show up. But that's inherent in certain fields, in certain contractor fields. Kathleen and I wanted to get something done one time with landscaping. I think she called 8 people. And they said, great, I'll be there tomorrow. Never showed up. And these are the people who want to make money. Now, so let me see, inoculating objections. If there's an objection you get a lot of, number 1, put it in your marketing material. That cleans it up right away. I mean, that's one way, as long as you have marketing material. You used to get questions many, many years ago, unjustifiable. People were saying, they would call us up and they go, is Richard going to be there? And I'd say, well, yeah, he's sure he's going to be there. And I thought, why are they asking me this question? We found out that someone in Brazil one time, what they did was they advertised Richard was coming to Brazil, which he didn't even know about. And when he didn't show up, the guy took and kept all the money. And told everybody Richard didn't show up, so I'm going to run the seminar for you. But Richard didn't even know about it. I called him up, said, Richard, what happened in Brazil? He said, I don't know. What happened in Brazil? They got an earthquake or something? I said, no, you didn't show up for a gig. He said, what gig? So people would ask us this question. They'd call up, is Richard going to be there? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Well, how do you know for sure? I said, listen, Richard's always been there. He's trained when he's been ill, for crying out loud, but he's there, So we put in our marketing material. It goes here, questions you might have or whatever it says in our brochure. It says, is Richard going to be there? And we go, Richard's there every day. So that goes away now that they read it. The other thing we put in there, you'll like this one. And this is not for inoculation, but it weeds people out from wanting to sign up. Because we used to get people who would whine and complain and doing all these things. And we just don't have time for this. Our seminars are really fun. So we put in there, this seminar is for adventurers only. If you're a whiner, a naysayer, blah, 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 whatever like that, stay home. We don't want you there, okay? I forget exactly the words, but that's pretty much the message. I had a guy, here's an example of how I raised an objection one time from a person without even knowing what I was doing at the time. Many years ago, it was early 90s. Richard was coming in to New Jersey, and it was for a 3-day thing. It was an introduction to DHE kind of thing. And some guy called me up and he says, hi, this is so-and-so. I said, okay, great. He says, listen, I'm in New York and I have about a group of maybe 5 or 6 people I want to bring to this seminar with Richard Bandler. And I said, great, no problem. I love taking your money. I didn't say that part, but I certainly thought about it. And I said to him, can you tell me a little bit about the seminar? And I said, well, it's this, it's that. It's just an introduction thing. You're going to get a chance to play around a little bit with your brain. So And at the end of that, the guy said to me, is there anything else? Is there anything else that I should know? And I said, you're going to love Patrick Moraz. The guy said, what's he coming for? And I said, now, if they don't know who Patrick Moraz is, he was a keyboard player in Yes in between Rick Wakeman. He was also the keyboard player with the Moody Blues, right? And that's another story how Richard ran into Patrick. But he helped Patrick with something, and therefore Patrick was indebted to Richard. So he traveled with us on the road, for a couple of years. So he played music at night and things and, whatever. And so the guy said, what's he coming for? I said, the music. He said, what music? And I said, well, sometimes people, he plays a little bit of, keyboard stuff while you guys are doing exercises and we'll have a little concert at night. And the guy said to me, he said, listen, I'm a serious therapist and I'm not coming here to have a good time. And I thought, yeah, you're coming here at all. And I told the guy, I said, well, maybe this isn't a seminar for you. He said, well, what about my 6 people? I said, have them call me. But none of them ever called me. Now, I took a loss. I didn't take a loss on a seminar. So I lost 6 people or 7 people, whatever it was. But if I not mentioned, think about this. If I had not mentioned Moraz, then when Moraz was going to play, he might have still come to me and go, what's this? What's this for? I would have had to still put up with the guy. So now we do have a question. We do have a question on our applications. The last question on our applications is, you have an open mind and a sense of humor. Okay. Now, some people just get simply and go, yes. Some people go, no. And we call them up and we go, you don't have a sense of humor? And they go, no, I was messing with you. I said, okay, good. I'm glad I called you. And some people, they put in the funniest answers to that question. It's a simple yes, no question, but they write like a few lines, which tells me they have a sense of humor.
Uh-huh.
But we do ask that question. We do ask that question. So the inoculation thing is, what can you do before it happens? I mean, that's really what it is. What can you do or say before it happens? And my own personal consulting, we need one more example, and we'll move on. My own personal consulting business, which I cut back on a lot over the last couple of years because I got too busy doing other things. Somebody would call me up. I have a private line, which means they had to get my number from someone. And they'd call me up on my private line. They say, is this John La Valle? And I go, yeah. And they go, well, I'm thinking about bringing you in. Just like that. I'm thinking about bringing you into my company. Now, I would probably say something, well, I actually have, that most people would not say, and I don't know any sales guy ever who would ever tell you to do this except me. I said to the guy, you don't want me. That's how I start in that case. And I said, why not? I said, because I'm expensive and worth it. And the other thing is, when you hire me, you see, you hire most consultants for 8 hours a day. I'm yours 24 hours, not 8. And so I had one guy take me up on it once. And then they say, wow, how much is it? I go, it depends. What do you want? And I start there. That's why I start with my sales process. They go, how much is a lot? I go, then what do you want? And then they tell me, and then I start from there. So I did have one guy one time who took me on that, I'm yours 24 hours a day. The problem was he kept me up till 4 in the morning, and we had a meeting at 7, except he was drinking scotch and I was drinking water. He thought it was vodka. So I was ready at 7. He wasn't.
Brilliant. Dear.
Sorry, I can't help myself but play around sometimes. It's just in my nature.
I know. That's brilliant. Yeah. Okay, so I think a couple of questions on timelines came up. When was the one? Okay, yeah. So I use timelines with my team every year, and I get them to plan the year ahead, thinking about what they want or what they need to achieve, and I find this really useful. Can you share an example of when you've used timelines in business to help either a manager and their team improve their performance?
Well, yeah, a couple of things. First of all, timelines is great, and it's such a natural thing to do in a business because they use timelines in business. Used to have different charts, all these different kind of charts they've had to map out what's the timeline for the project, blah, blah, blah. But the challenge, and I'm going to tell you how you work this one out. The challenge is everybody's going to have a different timeline, of course, for their own part of the project. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, except what's at the end point where they all meet.
Yeah.
So the company, so if you're going to have, everybody's got their own timeline. So if you go, well, everybody's got their own timeline, they bring in their map, blah, 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 and all that. Where do they meet that they agree on what's going to be the result of the project, the final result? Because as you know, teams typically don't work that well together unless you're really good at it. So what I've done is I've had people, I always start with, and I work my way down. So I start with somewhere that says, what's the end result? What's going to be the result of when we finish this project? And I always go for result. So it's going to be, and then I have to have them, what we call it, chunking up. So somebody will say, well, we want to be able to make sure that the employees are all doing their job. And I go, and what's the result for that? Or what's going to be the outcome for that? Or better yet, what's the point of that? So you want to be able to start getting it to where they can all agree, because the problem is if everybody doesn't agree on the same ultimate, let's go. A couple of things. One, there's no way you can pull what I call it anyway, pulling relevance on them. So remember, there's different parts in the timeline part for people when they're putting all their stuff together. It's not just enough to have their goals. They have to have the action plan that goes with it. Okay. There's objectives. Let me explain this to you. There's goals, objectives, and action plans. And then there's executing the action plans. So you might say, oh, that's a great goal you have. I support that, blah, blah, blah. But you don't know how this person is going to put in action plans about it. So that's got to be part of the time thing as well. What are they going to do and when and how? Now, I always let my people, when I was managing people, just come up with their own plans. I would look at them and I would have input into them. I would either say, okay, this looks good, or guess what? I don't think this is going to work real well. You might need to, make some adjustments to it. But I always gave them as much leeway as I could tolerate and made sure that they had that in their timeline and even up here. Because everybody can agree on the ultimate, let's say, ultimate goal, but they don't always agree on the plans or the how to get there. And I might have something going on in my department, and I'm going to say, well, let's do it this way, and it's going to affect Tom. But Tom doesn't know until he gets blindsided.
Mm-hmm.
So these are all important things to put on those timelines. You know, it's typical planning and execution. So strategy, tactics, strategies, you know, and execution. You've got to have all those elements in there. And as long as they're explaining it this way in their minds and putting it in here, you've got a better chance of going on. And the other problem is nobody comes up with this following thing. So Tom, we agree on this, right? Tom says, yeah. I go, okay, good. And I support you on this. I want you to go out and do it. I know you can do the best job you can. Tom, by the way, if you change anything, please let me know. Right? Tom, if you change anything, please let me know. Or if you run into a block and you got to make a shift directions, please let me know. And people don't do this. Why do I want to know? Because I'm going to keep track about with who else this might affect. That people don't consider this in part of the team thing. They think, you know, let's all work together. Well, I have no idea what working together means. The other problem is budgeting. And, you know, I might divert some of my budget money because I got a little bit of excess money. And the way I used to work was that I would go to Tom and go, hey, Tom, listen, I got a little bit of extra money. You need some in your budget. He said, yeah, actually, I'm short about $10,000. I go, let me go see accounting and I'll switch it over to you. People don't do this. You know, a lot of people don't do this. So, you know, whether that's part of the timeline thing or not, certainly part of running a good business. I always believed in, more than anything else, couldn't get away with it very often, in the matrix organization, which meant the person with the highest level of skill got to do that particular part of the project. Had nothing to do with your rank, had nothing to do with your title, had nothing to do with where you were in the company, top management, middle, you know, down the bottom somewhere, it didn't matter. If you had the skill, if I had a person, somebody else had a personal assistant, and that personal assistant had exquisite planning skills, I would go to their boss and go, I'm recruiting Sally onto this project because you got fantastic planning skills. And they say, well, you can't take Sally. I go, oh, I'm taking Sally, so let's deal with it. It didn't always work for me, of course. However, I really fully understood what a matrix organization meant. You know, there's different types of organizations. So even relevant to timeline, you probably want to take a look and see how your company's built, how's your organization built. So, but it's great. Timelines are great. The stuff works. It works in companies really well. And, you know, we don't do hypnosis in companies or anything like that. You know, we're only allowed to do creative imaging. And what's the other thing called? Oh, yeah, closed eye processes. But guess what? You can tell everybody, close your eyes and take a look at your timelines. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because then that's an automatic close your eye process. So then they can all be on the same, basically, wavelength, if you will, or they're all looking at their own timeline, but they're also looking at the end point of it, the end result, where you're all going to get the same result at the end for the company, because that's really what it's about anyway. Mm-hmm. It's not about this guy got his result and you didn't get yours. If you didn't get yours, probably the company's not going to get theirs. So great team building exercise, but not, I don't ever use these things just to play or do team building. I've always done it around a real project. That's the team building part. Always done it around a real project. Company's got a problem. Let's get everybody together who's involved in this thing and let's plan it out. And I would start doing all kinds of skills, you know, all kind of NLP things that I had in order to get everybody to agree on what they were going to do, how they were going to do it, but only in the case that it would reach the end result, whatever that was.
Great. That's very good advice.
You got this recorded?
Yeah, it's been recorded. So
yeah, good. I want a copy. I might forget what I'm saying.
It's good stuff. You should listen to it. It's really good.
Yeah, I should probably listen to myself once in a while.
Yeah. So Paula, thank you. Nadine, it's great that you're in, and yes, we are recording. So we'll get there. There were several questions that came in, obviously, regarding about what's going on in the world at the moment with the coronavirus and so on. I think one of the best ones was that obviously a big part of NLP is about rapport building. What advice would you give to people in terms of how we build rapport online rather than being in a room with somebody?
Well, here, let me put it this way. Number one is, I think most people have the element of rapport. They don't have it really well in their minds. You know, I got to tell you. First of all, if you have enough credibility and influenceability kind of things, I assume rapport most times. I just figure I have it until I notice that I don't. Well, let me tell you a little bit about rapport. Rapport is not about being nice. Everybody thinks it's about being nice. I like for people to be nice. I like to be nice. But it's really about being the same as the other, I was going to say clown, but it's basically about being the same. If you're having problems getting rapport with somebody, now you have to try some of the typical rapport skills. So let me tell you about doing this online during this period of time in this, whatever you want to call it, coronavirus pandemic thing. The fact that you're getting with somebody online demonstrates, number one, you care about them. So unless you're going to call them and berate them, okay? If you're going to call somebody and say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? How can I help you with something? Or how you doing on the thing? You need some more help with it. You're demonstrating to them that you care about them. And that's going to probably get you more in terms of rapport than trying anything fancy. Certainly you want to pay attention to what they're saying and how they're saying things, because repeating certain things back is more, not just about rapport. It's really about, staying in sync with the person in a way where, so if you said to me, if I said to you, so how you doing today? And you said, oh, I'm doing great. I have something I can say back. See, to me, everything goes moment to moment anyway. It's a little bit crazy for most people to think about it that way. And I'm going to respond to that. I go, oh, I'm so happy you're doing great. Now, the reason for that is even if it's you're selling something. If you're, let's say you're going to say, so what do you want in your new home kind of thing, right? And they said, oh, I need 3 bedrooms. I need three bedrooms. I want 2 full bathrooms, like that. I'm going to repeat that back because number one, to get rapport, you have to, ready for this? You can write this down. Demonstrate understanding. Mm-hmm. Not say I understand, not say I got it. You don't have anything because you haven't gotten into rapport with the person yet. Because when I demonstrate to people about the rapport thing, I say this, the way you first start is you must demonstrate understanding. Not say it's, yeah, I got it. I know, yeah, I know how you feel. No. It's by repeating back what they said. The other thing is, and when I say repeat, not every word they said, but certain, you'll know what they are. They're important to them when they mark it out. They go, oh, I need 3 bedrooms. And you go, oh, okay, so you need 3 bedrooms. And they go, yeah. But if you said to him, okay, so you need 3 places for people to sleep. Let me tell you about the mechanical part that happens. You're not going up to the synaptic trail that's already lit up. You're trying to start a new one. You're working for nothing. There's already a road that's lit up. Why do you want to start a new road? You see, in the book, in Persuasion, and even when I do the seminars, I tell people the following thing. We are taught, which is absolutely wrong to me, in both cases, to paraphrase what someone says. And I remember asking a consultant one time, I said, what's the purpose for me to paraphrase? And the guy gave it to me. It was golden. He said, to show them that you understand them. And I go, but actually you're insulting them. They say, I need 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. And you say, okay, so you need 2 lavatories and 3 places for people to sleep. Meanwhile, you're telling them they didn't say it to you right. That's the craziest thing. Mm-hmm. I tell a story from probably the 80s. Kathleen and I we were young yet. And I don't even think my son was born yet, but we were looking for a car. He was going to be born. And we went on a car lot. And it was a hot August day. And the guy, I'm looking at cars, with a lot of people on the lot, they were having a sale, whatever. And the guy comes up to me, he says, can I help you? And I said, yeah, I'm interested in this Cressida. That was the model of the car. And the guy looks at me and he goes, it's called Cressida. And I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, what do you call this? And I walked off the lot. Uh-huh. And I think of that story every time I go past that dealership. Okay, I drive past that a lot. Every time I pass that lot, I go, and I haven't been there ever since. Now, why did the guy have to correct me? Why does he care what I call it? He could have slid it in later on sometime. He could have talked to somebody else, writing up the paperwork as I was buying a car and said, John's interested in this Cressida, right? He could have done that without directing it at me. So that's a real big lesson right there. I think when we paraphrase to people, we're actually insulting them. So I don't teach that paraphrasing thing. And if somebody starts paraphrasing me, I say, no, you're wrong. I've done it in court. Mm-hmm. Okay, where people don't understand rule of law and they don't understand letter of the law. They don't understand about, how you have to answer questions. You only have to answer the questions, by the way. You don't have to add on to the answer in court. But so the lawyer would ask me a question. They'd say, okay, so do you know do you know Tom Phillips? I go, yeah, I know Tom Phillips. And the way would say, so basically you've known Tom for a really long time and you guys have gone and done things together. And I said, that's not what I said. I said, I know Tom Phillips. And they always try, and they always say, oh, so in other words, no, I don't want to hear in other words. I'm really sorry. Now, by the way, in a normal conversation, I'm not going to, don't do this with mom, you don't do this with dad, you might want to do it with your brothers and sisters, who knows? But it's just it's very simple. We're talking about, if you're going to have just a social conversation, I'm not going to, I'm not really going to care so much. But here, I'm in New Jersey. I have to tell you, most people would do that here in New Jersey. They'd say, no, that's not what I told you. No, that's not what I said. No. So this is important to understand. So this is a very important element of rapport. Now, you can break rapport just as fast as you can get rapport. And if you notice you broke rapport, you can get right back into it again. So, the other things you can do, you got the voice thing, you don't want to mimic their voice, but certainly can watch this rate of speech, the rate of speed, the rate of speech, their tone, certain words, of course, those are all important. These are the things that demonstrate understanding. Now, the reason, are you ready? So this is for all the parents too, if you have children. Mm-hmm. The reason to demonstrate understanding first, are you ready for this? Even if you're a salesperson, this one grinds the wrong way for some people. You have to earn the right to influence them. Mm-hmm. So how do you know when you've earned the right? Because that's a serious question I've had for years. Mm-hmm. Salespeople walk in and blah, 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 let me tell you, blah, blah, blah. Whoa. How about a cup of coffee or something? You want to sit and chat a little bit? Go to Italy and try that. You go to Italy, you don't go to Italy and start talking business. Let's start with that. You got to talk and sit and have lunch and talk about the flowers and the meal and the wine and the family and the stars in the sky and how wonderful the weather is. And then the buyer will bring up the thing, about, well, what are you here for? What do you want to talk about? But the point is this. You have to earn the right. People say, well, I deserve respect, and I go, you have to earn respect. I'm really sorry about that. And here's the part for the parents. You got to earn respect from your kids too. Mm-hmm. And it's not by giving them everything they want. That doesn't earn respect. Trust me on that. So you got to earn the respect in order to influence people. That's important. It's really, really important. So you're going to go online with somebody, you're going to do a Zoomer with them, things like that. You want to touch base. I've told people during this time, this is the time, if you're in a business, and I don't care if you're the owner of the company, I don't care if you're an employee of the company, it doesn't matter to me. Somebody asked me a webinar, and I'll get to this point. I was in Spain or something. Somebody said to me, what's the best and the most important NLP technique you could tell me that's actually explicitly going to work very specifically first thing tomorrow? And I said, oh, I got that one. It's called get off your butt and do something. Get out of your pajamas and do stuff. By the way, get dressed. I tell people, get out of your pajamas, man. What's the matter with you? You're hanging around in your lounging clothes all day long. You're watching TV, blah, 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 all these things. Get on the Zoomers, man. Start contacting people. This is the best time to be marketing. Mm-hmm. This is the best time to be getting in touch with people. Go do a little skit on the internet. You got kids? Oh, man, get your kids to do crazy stuff, video them, and put that on YouTube. First of all, you might get a lot of hits. You might get over 1.5 million hits. I've seen some of these things out there, and I go, I can't believe this person got so many 2 million hits. But look at this is the craziest thing. Even parents doing crazy stuff. Get back in touch with your family. You're with them. You're kind of stuck together a little bit. I don't know how it is over there in the UK, but they're loosening things up here in the US. Mm-hmm. They predicted here that our unemployment was going to go to 20%. Well, guess what? It dropped the other day, and we've added 2.5 million jobs. And all the states still aren't totally opened up. Here in New Jersey, we're not totally open just yet. This guy's opening it a little bit at a time. I don't really care. I don't go anyplace anyway. I just go to the stupid market, I call it. So, but those are the things you can do, online. All of your skills that you have, if you know about rapport and all the little things you can do to stay in rapport and get rapport, do them. It's the same thing if you're on the telephone. The only difference is if you're only seeing the person like me from here up like that, you can't see what they're doing with their foot, if they're tapping their foot, things like that. But all of that's not that important when you're online. So just do it. Best thing you can do is be helping people out, make them feel good. They'll appreciate you for it.
That's brilliant. Thank you. So on a similar vein, obviously, there'll be a lot of people out there at the moment who are in business either for themselves or they work for somebody else, and their business is surviving, possibly even thriving. as we move into the future, potentially we've got this brave new world where we're going to be doing a lot more online. How would NLP help those people to, you know, secure and grow their business?
Well, listen, first of all, one thing's for sure. Our lives are going to change if they haven't already. And when this thing opens up, I think all the economies are going to take off, quite frankly. Some people aren't working now. They're not making money right now anyway, making very little money, whatever. They're dipping into their savings and things like that. But I'm going to tell you what, when this economy things start opening up, people want to go spend money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's going to want to go to the pub, be with their friends, or if they want to go shopping and get some clothes, or if they want to take their kids, I don't know, someplace, you know, Disney's, is it Disney? Universal Studios in Orlando is already opening up.
Cool.
Now they say you got to wear a mask and we want you to distance a little bit, yada, yada, yada. But they're opening up, you know? And Disney's they're scheduled to open up soon too. But all of these things people are waiting. They're just waiting. They're caged up. They're waiting to go out and do things. So just get ready. Really, just get ready. Now's the time to market. Take a look at your business. Take a look at how you've done in the past year before this thing hit. You know, how did you do? What were you doing? Intensify it, increase it, make it better. You've got lots of things you could be doing. I get online with our trainers from time to time, every week or 2 weeks, whatever it is, you know, some of our trainers, and they start kicking ideas around, and it's good. Matter of fact, we've even attended some. Tom's been great at this with us. You know, he's gotten us together as a group of people to teach us and train us, you know, get experts in to train us how to do certain things that some of us just aren't aware of. You know, we've been spoiled. I don't mind telling you. You know, we've been spoiled. And as soon as this thing opened up, this online, I'm going to say Zoom, but that seems to be the moniker that's being used when you got all these other media as well. We were all looking at each other and going, huh? What's a Zoom? What? We're going to Zoom who? What? Uh-huh. And so now all of a sudden we had to catch up on this thing because we just plain weren't used to it. And most people probably didn't even know how to do it. Mm-hmm. You know, how do you set up a Zoom? What is that? Mm-hmm. You know, can I call people up? Well, it's a little different. You know, you got to know how to do this and do that, blah, blah, blah. And even today, we still rely on some other people to help us run a Zoom meeting. Mm-hmm. We're learning and we're working our way through it, but it's going to change. I get the guarantee it's going to change. I don't think face-to-face things are going to change. You know, if you have my neighbor, he sells, you know, like tableware and dishes and things like that to restaurants up and down the East Coast of the U.S., which is a big area for him. And sometimes his car wouldn't be there. You know, I'd see him come back. I'd say, where you been? He said, I had to go down to North Carolina. I had to go down to Georgia. You know, I had to meet with blah, blah, blah. And then I said, oh, that's cool. Well, now I've seen him home more. And I said to him, you know, can't you do like Zoom? And he said, no. He said, you know, I mean, I can touch base with them, but no. He said, these people, when they buy the tableware, they have to feel it in their hands. And I understand that because I like to cook. I understand that. The fork and the knife things have to feel just right. They're going to pick up the plate and they have to touch it. This is what they want to put in their restaurant or not. So he said, it's hard for me to do this. I said, but you can still stay in touch with them. He said, oh yeah, I still stay in touch with them. And I tell them I'm going to take a ride down there as soon as I can, like that. So you've got to be able to know how are you going to reformat your business. Things are going to change. This is changing. So, you know, NLP wise, I have to tell you, there's no replacement. I mean, we've got some people doing a little bit of stuff online right now, but there's no replacement for face-to-face, live face-to-face with people, because NLP was developed to be worked with another human or other humans, you know, face-to-face. You got to be able to reach out and touch them. You know, if you've been doing NLP for a while, you know about anchoring, things like this. You've got to be able to do that. And what if you're going to ask somebody to close their eyes? You know, you want to watch everything that's going on. You have to watch, even like I said before, their feet tapping. You know, you never know. Those are different, could be different messages that they're not even purposely putting out there. So live face-to-face is in a lot of things is still going to be important. I think it's still going to be important. The extent of it, I don't know. I just don't know. I guess however you format your business is going to determine that. I think that if you have the type of business that you could do it on a Zoom call or whatever, at least for a short call, that's going to work. I've told people for years and years and years, and it's going to be the same thing with Zoom or whatever webinar thing you have, is that the reason, because people would say, well, what about, you know, how do I get an appointment with somebody else? I go, you call them up. And they go, well, can I just sell them on the phone? I go, I wouldn't. to me, the purpose of a phone call is to get a face-to-face meeting. I've been saying that for 20 or 30 years now. And they say, why? I said, because it's easy for them to hang up the phone. Listen, I could hit my button right now on my computer and you guys are gone, right? But if you're in their office, it's going to take a little bit of something extra for them to throw you out. It's happened. I know. It has happened. But chances of them throwing you out, they'll probably say, just thank you so much for stopping in. I'm really not that interested, but thanks a lot, blah, blah, blah. Probably what's going to happen. But on a phone, they go, thanks, and they hang up. And so to me, face-to-face is always the best way of doing business. If you're already used to doing it on the phone, do it on a Zoom. They can see what you look like and you can watch them. But if you're used to going in and meeting with people, if you're busy, I'm not sure I like the idea about offices, people in an office where they're going to have everybody in their cubicle on different screens. I don't think that's going to work real well to me. You know, there's something that's missing when face-to-face. It's called the energy of the room and the energy between the people. And it's the same thing with you know, if you're going to have business meetings, it's okay for now because you know, we're all being prevented pretty much from traveling anywhere. But once this thing lightens up, then I don't know, man. I think I would want to go back into the workplace myself. So, and then somebody did ask me, they said, how's it, you know, what do you think about, you know, managing people now on a Zoom call and things like that? I said, listen, if you're the boss and you want to manage people right now, let them do what they're supposed to do and leave them alone. I said, what? I go, leave them alone. First of all, the statistics have already shown that people at home, if they're able to do work at home, they work harder than if they were in the office. Because in the office, they get distracted, number one. They got their friends stop in the cubicle and start chatting with them. They get distracted. Then they got to remember where they left off at, blah, 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 all these things. They got to go to these meetings. I don't know why the meetings are. Meetings shouldn't last more than 5 minutes or 10 minutes for something. And so they're doing it now. And I said, you should leave them alone anyway. You know, my idea of a good manager, I don't even know if this is a question you have on there, but my idea of a good manager is how well is everything run when they're not there? The manager's not there. Every job I had in corporate, my job was to work myself out of that job, but in such a way that everybody I left behind was doing their job and doing it well. And that was the way I did things. And I did very well that way. So I only had one guy fired me 6 times. Some of you heard that story a few times, I'm sure, because I see some of the names on the thing.
Yeah.
But just to fire me 6 times must say something about success because they had to keep bringing me back until they finally got rid of the guy. But you know, managers think they have to butt their nose in. You have to stick their nose in on everybody's business all the time. I don't get this. Train them. If they got all the right training, okay, they're going to do their job. They want to do their job, I think, most of the time. Give them a distraction, they're going to take it. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't finish today because Joe was stopped in my office and he was talking about this other thing. Oh, stop. You know, just stop. Do your job. You know? So I don't know if that answered your whole question there or not.
Yeah, I think it was great. I think that the kind of the flip side of that is obviously there are a lot of people who have either unfortunately lost their jobs or having been at home for so long, they've had time to really reconsider their careers. And so they're thinking about doing something different when all of this has kind of settled down. So we had several questions from people who said, look, you know, I'm a practitioner, I'm a master practitioner. I'm really thinking about going down a different career route, or I need to go down a different career route because I've lost my job. And I'd like to become either an NLP trainer or I'd like to become an NLP coach, life coach, business coach. What advice would you give to people in that situation?
Well, first of all, for the people who say they want to be an NLP trainer, I tell them, you got to be crazy. Okay, I say this all the time. I start off with trainer training by saying, how many people want to be an NLP trainer? Of course, everybody in the room raised their hand, just about everybody raised their hand. And I say, oh, you nuts? You got to be nuts. They go, well, like, why? I go, listen, first of all, there's too much competition out there. And that's not a bad thing. I like competition. I can tell you, you can earn a good living. Okay? I don't go for the titles of life coach and all these other things because most of the people who are going to depend on that are going to be because they want to make money at doing something like that, but they've never had a job or they've never known how to really get things done. So how are they going to coach somebody, right? And that's important to understand. So my thing is to say, listen, you're in a job, you know, you probably lost your job. Let's say you lost your job. And so consider what you've done. And then consider whether or not you can start teaching people in that field something. And I wouldn't call it NLP. I got to tell you, you know, it's great in the UK, by the way. NLP's got a big name in the UK. In the States, most people go, what's that? And it's been around here. It started here. And they still say, what's that? What's NLP? In some other countries, it's big, you know, things like that. So I got friends who are like, they come to the seminar, they go, you know, they're an accountant. I go, good. And I go, what do you come here for the trainer training for? And they go, well, I want to be able to be an NLP trainer. I go, don't do that. Go out and teach accountants how to get in rapport with their customers. Mm-hmm. You know, go out and teach NLP skills to people for their lives. Not that you're just gonna be an NLP trainer and go out and do this thing in a public domain and everything is all this other stuff, you know, try to recruit people. People come to the seminars. Let me tell you what happens. People come to the seminars and they see all the seats filled up, and then they see what people do. You know, let's say it's Richard or whatever, and they sit in the room and they go, oh, I can do this. I go, you got to get people in a seat first. So most people don't even know how to market. So if you're going to go out and you're thinking about starting a whole new career, you've got to be serious thinking about how are you going to market? What are you going to do? First of all, you got to be known in the marketplace, and forget the internet. That's like the worst place to do this. I've told people over and over and over again, you've got to start in your local domain. You've got to start in your town, and then you work your way out. Very simple. You can go to, let's assume you've got a business you want to run. Let's say you're going to do, I don't know, you're going to be a coach, right? There's a lot of coaches out there. You're going to be the best coach there is. Well, all of these groups in your area, you got the Chamber of Commerce, you got the Young Presidents Club, you got the Personnel Association, the Human Resources Association. I still don't know why they're different. You got the Engineers Association. You have all these groups, professional groups. What they really are is an excuse to get out of the office at least once a month. You know, Rotary clubs, Chambers of Commerce, people go to these things. They all know each other, blah, blah, blah. They have lunch, yada, yada, yada. And somebody gives a talk. Now, that talk might only be 45 minutes, something like that. First of all, these are all nonprofit organizations. However, they're your neighbors. They're in your town. Now, you might not know who they are. They certainly don't know you. However, they're not going to get to know you on the internet because everybody's on the internet these days. They're going to want to know you and face you and shake hands with you. Mm-hmm. So get in touch with these organizations. Just when you're ready, get in touch with these organizations. This is what publicists will do. They'll get in touch with the organizations and they'll say, hey, I got a hot speaker, man. This person will come in. They are great. They're funny. They'll give your people a good time. They'll be laughing, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. And they'll say, all right, we'll book them. Now, unless you're a top-notch speaker, they don't have much money to pay you. They just don't. So what I've done in the past is they say, well, how much are you? And I say, listen, I don't want the money really, you know, I don't even want to tell you how much I am for. If you book me for 45 minutes or an hour, you're going to pay me for the day because my day is shot. However, I'm going to come in and do this for you and no problem. And here's what I get in return. And I tell them what I want in return. Now, back then it was easier. You didn't have the GDPR thing, all this stuff. I say, I want everybody's names and address who belongs to your association so I can stick them in my database. And then I can market to them. Well, I can't do that these days. Now I can say, I'm going to put a fishbowl out and people can put their business cards in and say if I was going to do that these days. And then the second thing is I tell them, I go, and you're going to write me a letter. You're going to write me a letter telling me how wonderful I am. And if you have trouble writing that, I'm going to write it for you and you can put it on your letterhead and send it to me. So you can start to build a portfolio of some sort. But this starts at the local level. It starts at the local level. People want to reach out and touch. They want to get to know who you are. People are tired of getting scammed on the internet by people. You know, when they look at you and they go, wow, that person's great. Of course, it's a picture that's 20 years old. It's been photoshopped 3 times, you know, and all these things. They don't care what you are in person. It's better that they meet you in person. Mm-hmm. They want to reach out and touch you. And that's important. They want to feel what it feels like to be with you. Now, when you go do the talk, number one, you never talk about yourself. You never talk about NLP things. You never talk about what you're selling. You never do that. You go in and you give them a good time. So if you have some really good NLP exercises to do, you do those with people. You don't even have to do the whole exercise with everybody. You know, if you just went in, for those of you who know NLP, if you just went in on a 45-minute thing and you did eye accessing and you brought somebody up and did a demonstration in front of the room, this blows people away. This just blows people away because most people don't even realize they're making pictures in their head or hear voices in their head, you know, or sounds or whatever. They're just not aware. And nor are they aware they can change those things. This just blows people away. So I'd bring people up and give them, I say, oh, let me see somebody, and I'd send them outside, and I'll go stand outside for me, and I'm going to explain to everybody some things. And I'd bring them up, put them in a chair, And I'd ask them questions and watch people watch their eye cues, watch where their eyes were moving, and tell me at the end of this thing whether or not they were following the chart I put on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
But this blows people away. They go, "Oh my God, this is great." I go, "Great. This is the very, very, very tip of the iceberg. You have no idea." Okay. So those are the things. You got to do things that are entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to certain of the meetings, if you belong to the Rotary Club, you go to the Rotary Club meetings, you might notice that if they might bring in somebody who's a great entertaining person, and they're local people, they could be who knows what they are, but they're funny. I have there's a couple. Kathleen and I belong to it's actually an Italian group. It's a community service group where we raise money. We raise money for St. Jude's Hospital and an orphanage place and things like this. And there's a couple that comes in, okay, and this is so funny. And what they do is they go, "This is great. They're Italian now," and the argument is it sauce or is it gravy? But while they're doing this thing, it's very, very entertaining, and they're teaching a lot. Mm-hmm. But the whole time around, they're sitting going, "It's gravy." And they go, "No, it's really sauce." And because that's always been an argument, whether are you making tomato sauce or tomato gravy? And but it's entertaining, you see. So that's the important part. You're not going in to talk about you. You're not going in to talk about what you're selling them. You're not going in and talking about, all these. It's about giving them a good time. You only got 45 minutes with them. Light their candles up.
Cool. Appreciate that. So I think I've got one more questions connected with this thread, and I can see there are some questions coming through. So guys, if you want to start putting questions into the chat box, we'll see how many of those we can get through. But I think that the kind of follow-on question that was connected with the previous questions, John, a couple of people have said that they really want to go down the NLP route as a trainer or a coach post-COVID, but their partners don't see the benefit of NLP, and they're giving them a hard time. So how do they convince their partners? What NLP techniques could they use?
Well, listen, there's a couple of things here. Number one is you can't change the other person. It's not that easy to change the other person unless they really want to change. So I don't know what they go home and tell the person. If they go home and tell their spouse, "I want to go learn this NLP," probably the spouse says, "Oh God, now what?" And I don't know what that means, except probably if you've gone to other seminars to learn certain things, they don't see your spouse doesn't see the fruition of this. In other words, you haven't been making any money at what you've gone out and learning so far. I don't know, things like this. Who knows? Here's the thing. When I was first going to NLP class, first of all, anybody and everybody can benefit from learning NLP. The thing is this: you've got to live it. You've got to have it in your brain. You basically got to format all of this, not just to learn about techniques and things, because then you're selling it. You're always selling it to your spouse and things like that. It's about you changing, so that they recognize the change. When I first went to learn to do NLP, I stumbled on NLP. I wasn't looking to change anything. I was happy with me. I had my own problems and getting along with some people, but I didn't think it was a problem. And then I went and saw, and I actually was a trainer in the company that I was working for. So I was getting all these brochures, and one came past my desk that said NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And the first thing I thought was like, this sounds really interesting, because I liked grammar when I was young, and I used to like diagramming sentences. Don't cringe. I know some of you are cringing. Now, don't worry about it. They stopped teaching diagramming sentences for a time. They are trying to go back to cursive writing, though, but that's good. And so I went, and my first weekend or 2 weekends, I was going home, and I was saying to Kathleen, "Oh, honey, listen, let me try this out. This is so great. You'll listen. I know it's great you're going out there to find yourself now. I found myself a few years ago. She went to Est when she was younger. I went to Est, and I found myself. I understand everything about what you're doing." I go, no, really, really, really. And she finally caved in one day and said, "All right, go ahead." And I go, "Okay." And I started doing this thing with her because she allowed me. And she looked at me and she said, "When's the next seminar?" I said, "Well, it's like next weekend." She goes, "Good, I'm jumping in." Now, maybe I was lucky. I don't know, but she had already had some experience with this. Your spouse is either looking for one of two things. Either there's no change in you, or, all right, you're learning all these things, so where's the money, honey? You're not making the money. And that's fair enough. I got to tell you, that's fair enough. But everyone I can think of, we have people who go out and learn all kinds of hypnosis, which is great. They come to learn NLP because they know they can make their hypnosis even better, because it's about the language, not the techniques. It's about the language, and they can make it even more, I'm going to say more better, even though that's inaccurate. They can make everything they do better. So how do you convince your spouse? I don't know. I think you have to change a little bit yourself so that they recognize, wow, there's something going on here. And then there's the earning the income part. So I don't know which one it is. So we used to have, which I don't recommend doing if you're going to be a trainer. When we were doing training in New Jersey, we used to have it on weekends because it was convenient. Didn't really care to do it. We stopped doing it for a while. But we had one weekend and we called it Family Weekend, where you could bring your spouse and your children. We had some trainers come in and they would play with all the games with the children and stuff, teach them spelling strategies and all these things. But we would have couples arguing, okay? And the husband mostly would be there and going, I don't know why you dragged me here. This sucks. You just brought me here so these people can manipulate me better than you because you can't do it at all. This really sucks. And then you get an argument. I'm talking about a loud argument in the training room where we said, whoa, let's go step outside for a second. And I don't know which one of you wants to leave, but one of you is going to leave because I'm not going to put up with this in my training room. So, you know, the best way I know of helping people or for you to help someone to change in relationship to you is for you to change first. That much I have to tell you. You know, people say, you know, after I was learning for a few years, I had to learn to be, one of my bosses said to me when he hired me, it was not really exactly 100% his choice. The president of the company went and told him that he was going to hire, you know, that this guy had to hire me. He was a good guy. And he said, why? He said, because John wants to be a trainer. The guy goes, I'm looking for a professional trainer. I love John. He's a great guy, but he works out in manufacturing. He's worked out with the truckers and all that stuff. Great guy, but, you know, John's like a little, you know, he's like a diamond in the rough, you know? And the president, of course, said to him, that's good. That's good to know because you're my developer of people. So now you get to show me what you can do with a diamond in the rough. And so the guy hired me. And the first thing he did was he sent me to what we would call charm school. He said to me, you are going to charm school. And I said, what the fuck for? And he said, that's one reason. And I said, oh. And he said, so you're going to charm school. So he sent me to this other consultant we knew. And it was a great seminar, I have to say. It was only 8 people, and it was really intense, and I had a blast. And he said, I came back, and boss says, so how was charm school? I said, it was fucking awesome. And he said, you didn't learn anything, did you? And I said, yeah, I did. I'm just teasing you. But I had to learn to smooth it out a little bit. You know. And if people would notice, you know, because I changed my approach and stuff like that a little bit, very little bit. And the best part is I still have the full repertoire of the things that I can do, which is another part of it. You know, how many skills can you possibly develop? But people with friends of mine would say, you know, you're really nice lady. You know, you used to be a real asshole. And I go, I can still be a real asshole, but it's okay. And the funny thing is that then it gets harder and harder to remember those times. So you got to change first if you want somebody else to change in relationship to you. You've got to make the change, not them.
That's really right. I'm laughing at some of the answers that are coming in. I don't know if you can see these, but June said the answer or the solution to that problem is to hypnotize them. That might work.
I don't do hypnosis.
I know you don't.
I only talk to people a little bit.
Len said leave them. Great to see the compassion coming through there. That's fantastic.
Well, that's one way, but then there's no challenge, you know.
Yeah, I know.
You have to go. You know, I always look at it as a challenge. I know. Listen, my best friend, we've known this guy since we're 5 years old. Okay, do we still get on each other's nerves? Yeah, you know, we always did from the time we were 5. So again, it's a relationship. You want to maintain the relationship, it's called negotiate a little bit. You know, be a little flexible. So
that's really cool. So I'm just going to, Claire, I've got some great exercises. I can chat to you about those. Claire's a friend of mine. She's put a question about exercises.
Okay, good.
And some stuff. Really good question from Barbara. It says, John, I've heard you once saying you use 2 timelines. How do you use
I have time. I have 2 timelines.
You have 2 timelines, yeah.
Yeah. So I've had people ask me about when I'm working with people or whatever. And what I realized when I didn't realize about timelines, you know, I mean, who thought about it? I never thought about it until I heard the term and someone said to me, what direction is your timeline going in? Now, I know there's probably people here that don't have any idea what timelines are. I'm not sure what your makeup is of the group.
There's a few people that are new to NLP, so, you know.
Okay. So timeline is just a matter of how we organize our thoughts in our mind relevant to time. And so in my mind, basically, you know, if I were to ask you a question like, you know, point to where your future is, then you're going to point to where your future is. Some people point in front of them. Some people point to this side. Some people point to that side. And if I said, where's your past? Like if you want to remember, you know, something you did last week and last year and 5 years ago, where point to where that is. And the important thing to understand is you don't really have a timeline in your head. What you have is you have spatial recognition. Mm-hmm. So we use space to denote time. So we've learned in our minds, you know, you watch people that go, oh, that was yesterday. And they're going to go like that. They're telling you where their past timeline is at the moment, but it's not always there. I got to tell you, it moves around, you rotate it around, you know, it's not always in one place. And some people have, you know, different shapes to them. Some go like this, some go like this. But it's how we organize our thoughts, especially our plans and our memories. So I've always had, I didn't realize I had two until I noticed someone was asking me a question about it. And what happens is, I'll see if I can show you this way. Let me see how I put my screen down a little bit. Is that I have one timeline, let's say it's down below. But so one timeline goes like this, where it's the past, the present, and the future. And the second one is just below that, and it's the past, the present, and the future. Now, for those of you who are studying NLP, if you haven't noticed yet that that they're usually, but not always, remember, everything's not 100%. If it was, believe me, I'd put it in a pill and sell it to you. The generalization is, in most cases, how someone has their timeline set up is that it's going to be relevant to their eye accessing cues. So in other words, if they access visually past here, probably their past timeline is over here, if not behind them. Same thing with the future. So it's really that. And so what would be was when I'm planning, I'm going to tilt my screen again. So if I'm planning, okay, when I plan, I have it like this. So it's the past, the present, and the past, present, future, like that. And so once I make a decision, then it drops down into the bottom, you know, to the next timeline just below that. And so it's past, so like I should be past, present, future. Mm-hmm. Okay. But I've been doing that for probably since I was a kid, but I never realized I even had to. Because when someone said to me, describe your timeline to me, the first thing I said to them was, which one? And they just looked at me. But they went to the wrong place. They said, no, I don't mean past lives. And I was like, past lives? Because at that point in my life, I mean, I've done some really wild and crazy things, but I wasn't that familiar about, you know, past life stuff. And I don't even do that anymore. I stay away from that scary stuff. And I don't need to know. I figure if I, you know, I believe in the karma thing. If I brought it into this lifetime, I'll deal with it now. And that way I won't have to deal with it in the future. So that's what I meant by two timelines. And then the other part that I would do, that I explain in seminars is, let me see, I'm not going to see me this way, is I'll make two timelines on side of me here on the side. Because if I'm going to work with somebody, I'm not using my real timeline, because I might make a change in my own timeline that I don't want, because it's not for me, it's for you. So I'll create two timelines on the side. One is for me, it's not my real timeline, and one is for you. And as I'm explaining things, I'm already 3 steps ahead of what you're doing as I'm giving you instructions. Because from the 3 steps ahead, I'm predicting in my own mind. I'm able to predict it with a good basic, you know, I don't know what you call it, percentage of time, percentage of getting it done. It's going to work. And so I'm usually 3 steps ahead of where you are, even as I'm giving you instructions. And so in my mind, I'm already 3 steps ahead. I've already given you the instructions to do the one you're doing. And I'm 3 steps ahead. So if I use two timelines to do that, one is for me to start predicting, and the second one is for you in terms of what I have you doing. That's the best way I can explain it without having you, you know, sitting here with me.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay, that's great. So guys, keep the questions coming if you want. I've got one for John. So again, based on some of the questions that came in, one thing I've learned over the last 12 years since I set up my business is to think about who, not how. So I think a lot of people, when they go into business for themselves, think I've got to learn everything, and how do I learn it? Which I think is wrong. I think what you need to do is you need to find the people that you can outsource to, who are better than you at doing those things, whether it's marketing, telephone sales, or whatever. What advice would you give to somebody who was thinking of setting up a business in terms of outsourcing? When should they outsource? How much should they outsource? That kind of thing.
Well, it's in our business for the last 30 something years, it's Kathleen and I.
Yeah.
That's it. Once in a while, my mom-in-law comes up because we need to keep her a little busy, and we give her filing to do. But we outsource if we have to outsource. We outsource. People say, do you have any employees? And I say no, and I don't want any employees. They bring too much baggage with them, and I'm not interested, quite frankly. Have people say, well, I can come and I could do this and I could do that and I could run your database for you, all this kind of stuff. And I right away think, yeah, sure you could. You can run it right down the street and sell it to somebody. Oh, can I be your apprentice? I don't have apprentices. I'm really sorry. If you want to be my apprentice, come wash my car every week. I have 2 of them, my wife's and mine. Come and wash our cars every week for the next year, and then I'll think about it. It's worth outsourcing because, there's a lot of people out there. I tell people, I've learned some things from other people outside. If I've learned enough that I can do it myself, then I'm happy to do it myself. I like doing some things myself. But in the very beginning, and I had to learn about marketing stuff. Mm-hmm. And I learned my basic marketing things. I went and learned things from J. Conrad Levinson. And he's the guy who ended up writing the Guerrilla Marketing book. But before that, he was with the company. They did the Marlboro Man, Jolly Green Giant, the Pillsbury Doughboy, these things. And then he went into direct mail marketing. And so then he wrote the book on guerrilla marketing. I got to know Jay actually, because he one time said, this is we were still emailing, and this is back in the days of CompuNerd and AOL, and I think Prodigy. I think those were the only 3 things you could do emails with. And if you were on AOL and I was on CompuNerd, that's what I called it, I couldn't email you to AOL at that time. Some of you might be too young to even remember all of this. So he finally said, here's my phone number, just give me a call. And I said, fine. And I called Jay. We got to be friends. And actually, he was living, he lived all over the place because he had a Winnebago. And he just drove around with a big satellite internet connection, even back then. So he ended up going and being in Florida for a good part of the time. And my son got to meet him, actually through someone else, and ended up going to his house and sitting down and having dinner with him. But Jay taught me a bunch of things about direct mail marketing. Let me put it that way. And we still use it. We have the internet, of course. We got all of social media things, but I still do direct mail marketing. And the things he taught me were very simple, and he stopped me from doing some things that would have been stupid. For example, when I first started with him, and I said to him, Jay, so where do I start? He goes, what's the most important thing in your business to you? And I said, money in the bank. He said, no. Try again. I said, this. He said, no. And I said, what is it then? He said, do you have a database? What? I said, a what? He said, a database. I said, what do you mean? He said, okay, so you don't have a database, so you know what I'm talking about. So, and he said, I don't want you to just get any database. I want you to go and get a customer relationship management database. I'm even going to tell you the one I started with, and it was a DOS program. I started with ACT, and it was DOS. Oh, yeah. Oh, it was blue screen left and right, overstack, what they call it, what was it called, overload, things, general error. I wanted to meet general error one day. So that's where I started. And he said, I still do this, every activity you engage in, everything, I want you to get their name, their address, their phone number, their fax number, get their dog's name, their kids' names, get their spouse's name if you can, get everything you can. We didn't have email back then. This was way back. This is in the late 80s. And I said, okay, all right. Then I had to get a database thing, and then I had to do all of this. And he said, every activity that you engage in must make a contribution to your database. And I said, why? He said, because how are you going to stay in touch with people? And even back then, by the way, we were doing mailings, postage stuff and all these things, phones, faxes. Then email came out. And I was like, wow, this is great. Jay, I don't have to do all this direct mail, putting everybody's address and everything in, right? He said, wrong. I said, what are you talking about? He said, listen, I know some guys who are really, they're way ahead on this internet thing, but you're not going to see it just yet. There's going to be so much email going on in the next few years out there. People are going to change their email address faster than they change their socks. And I said, oh, well, then what do I do? What kind of stuff should I get in my database? Get their name, their address, their fax number, their phone number, get their email address, get their dog's name, get their cat's name, And that's what I did. And we still use that, by the way. Okay. If you today, if you were to go to ask for information, you're going to get an email. Okay. You're not going to get the hard copies yet because of this Corona thing. Believe it or not, the US, at least for now, has stopped delivering US mail. Are you ready? to 130 countries. That doesn't leave very many open, right? Oh yeah, it's like they got a list on the website, because I got a letter back I sent somebody a letter, went to South America, went to Ecuador, and had a sticker on it that said, "This is being returned because we're not delivering to this country." And I thought, that's never happened before. And I looked at it and it said, "If you want your money back, go to this site and get your, and register for the money back." And I said, "No, I'm not doing that because I've never gotten my money back from the post office." I went to the post office and I said, "What's this about?" And they said, "Well, yeah, there's a list. And we're not." I said, "Where's the list?" The lady said, "Show me the list." I said, "Can I get a copy of that?" She goes, "No, not really. I can't give you the list because it's the only one I have. But you can go online again." I found a list. Okay. And she gave me back my money. It was $5 for postage. I said, "Oh my gosh, we were sending out so much mail. $5 a pop. I don't mind spending it, but I'm not going to get anything back because the person didn't receive the mail." Mm-hmm. But you're going to get an email, and then you're also going to get, with all your information on it, you're going to get the application, all that stuff. You're also going to get it in the postal mail. Okay. We still do that. So he told me, he said, don't, you still got to collect this. Let me tell you what this means. I cannot tell you, I go to so many websites because people say, "Can you check my website and tell me how nice it is and whether it's good and everything else?" First thing I do is I go to their request page, and all they're asking for is your name and your email address. Uh-huh. And I'm thinking, wow. And people say, "Well, why would you use their address if you're not going to send them something else?" So because if their email bounces back, I'm going to send them a little postcard. I'll pay the postage. I'll send them a little postcard that says, "Hey, we tried reaching you on your email address and it's obviously changed. So please contact us here at this address and give us your new email address." A lot of people don't do it, but a lot of people do. So marketing wise, you've got to, I tell people, listen, marketing gets people to your door. You've got to market. So you want to open up your own business again, you're not going to just run out there and say, "Hey, here I am, blah, 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 blah. IR NLP coach. I'm a master coach. I'm a life coach," all that stuff. You got to market first. People, my idea is that when people want to, if you're doing good marketing, they're going to come to you. You don't have to go to them. We don't make cold calls. Not even in my consulting business, never did. I'm sorry. I did it for one day. And I said, "I'm not doing this. This is crazy. I'm not doing this. I'm not going to spend my time calling up companies, trying to get through to the past the gatekeeper and all these things, get to the decision maker. Not going to happen. I'm not doing it. I know where to find the decision maker if I really want them. I just got to follow them when they're leaving work one day and follow them to the pub and just sit next to them. I can do that. I can follow them to the golf course. I don't play golf, but you know what? I can meet them. So we weren't doing that. I go to different places. The first thing I go is, does my website look nice? I go, "No. I mean, it looks pretty. Thank you so much." The only people who are going to find it, by the way, guess who? Your parents, maybe your brother and sister, if they care enough, cousins, and your grandparents. That's it. Because you've got to be able to market so people find you. Marketing gets people to come to your door. And part of that is, and I don't mean email people every day. I know NLP companies email every day. They have no idea what they're doing. That's way too much. I have a newsletter I put out. Once a month it goes out. It goes out on the first day of the month. I haven't missed for 20 years. Mm-hmm. It goes out once a month. It's got little ideas in it, little articles. I have people contributing to it. They're great articles. Mm-hmm. Do I send them out once a week? No. Do I send out every day? Hey, we've got a seminar coming up. We got a seminar coming up. No, I'm not going to do that because it's an NLP thing. You see, people don't know about, threshold patterns and compulsion blowouts. You jam enough into their minds too much, too often. They're going to get tired of it. Okay. How many times is your spouse going to come home late from work before you get tired of that and you're going to say something? Mm-hmm. The same thing. It's called a threshold pattern. And it's good for some things. If you want to have you want to do a threshold pattern to blow something out that you don't want to be doing anymore, mm-hmm. That's how it works. So you've got to understand those kind of elements. NLP is great for everything you do. I think chiropractors should learn NLP. Definitely doctors should. The NHS, by the way, is big on NLP. They're big on it. A lot of companies in the UK are big on NLP. You don't even have to go out. You don't even have to go out and get a new business. You probably get another job, a mm-hmm. different job. And I can guarantee you, if you put NLP on there, especially if it's from Society of NLP, you probably up your chances of getting a job in the company because it's very, very popular, at least that I know of in the UK. Not so much in the US. It's very popular in Germany. It's popular in Italy. It's getting more the real good NLP is getting more popular in France. You've got other people teaching stuff that's not NLP. They're calling it NLP, things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, for those of you that don't know me, I do a hell of a lot of work in the UK with the NHS, and I work with other health economies around the world as well. And we're getting so many requests now about NLP,
Yeah.
to some extent about hypnosis as well. So it is growing in popularity. It's huge. And just going back to what you were saying, I think that, yeah, networking is key. So if you're going to set up a business, tell your friends, tell your family, get them to tell their friends and their family. People can't buy you if they don't know what you are or what you do or where you are. I think that's really important. The other thing I've learned about outsourcing as well is that, there are some great websites out there. So things like Fiverr.com, Freelancer. There are people out there who will do the things that either you don't want to do or you're not good at. And they're usually pretty affordable when you go to those websites. I think if you are thinking of setting up your own business as your main business or even as a side hustle, they're the kind of places I would go in order to to outsource.
The only thing Kathleen and I do we don't outsource at all. I mean, we outsource for IT, to get computer programs up and running and things like that. Not stuff for the PCs, but big things. Mm-hmm. Is that we see every request that comes in every day.
Yeah.
And when you get an email from me or Kathleen, it's us. Yeah. We're actually sending the email. We don't have any we got autoresponders. Hey, I'm busy right now, I'll get back to you. But you don't have nobody writes our emails for us. Mm-hmm. And even with our database system, which is, I'm going to say semi-automatic. In other words, the information comes in, it goes into the database, and then we look at it, and then Kathleen decides what we're going to send to you. Or I look at it. She looks at it more than I do, because we actually have our thing where she takes care of certain things and I take care of certain things. And if she's busy, I take over some of the things she's not doing. And if I'm busy traveling out, whatever, and she takes care of some of the things that I'm usually doing. And that's called a partnership, by the way. That's called a marriage. Mm-hmm. We're probably one of the few companies or couples anyway that work together and have for the last 30 plus years and still get along.
Mm-hmm. It's impressive.
Well, yeah, but it's important because, if I make a decision and I wasn't supposed to, then she goes shopping. So I don't make those decisions. It's very simple. We understand each other very well. Now, she's not a big shopper, but so yeah, I've outsourced some things, and sometimes I've been disappointed outsourcing some things. You really got to check the reputation of some people.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Yeah.
I think so, guys. If you want to still put more questions into the chat box, that's fine. There were several questions that came in around the Milton model. Sure. So I guess first of all, for people who don't know what the Milton model is, if you could explain briefly, that would be great. And then the question was around this theme. Do you have a particular favorite part of the Milton model that you would use in business? And if so, what is it?
Let's see. The Milton model is the other half of the set of language patterns, if you will, or language skills. One is meta model, the other is Milton model. Mm-hmm. Milton was a great hypnotist kind of person. And of course, when you use Milton model, you're basically chunking up with words, using more general type words and things. And meta model is really sort of getting you to chunk down, but to be more specific about things. You have to understand both models in order to really work your own language processing, which is good. But sometimes people are too ambiguous, okay? And sometimes people are too specific. I knew two vice presidents, I tell this in seminars, I knew two vice presidents. One, first of all, they chunked up too fast. In other words, it's like you can go all the way to the top if you're gonna use a Milton model pattern to be like, why are we here? Okay, I mean, and what's the answer to that question? And now you start getting into the philosophizing of stuff. Whereas if you chunk too down far, that's called nitpicking. Like, how exactly did you make that mistake? So, and then it could be even a positive note. So if you understand those models, both of them, because one goes up and one goes down, yep. then you get to use them pretty elegantly. Mm-hmm. But if you don't use them appropriately, you're creating and you're going to run the entire, basically, equation of what we call missed communication. So example might be couples deciding on vacation, and the first spouse says, let's take a vacation. And the other spouse says, wow, that's great. And then the other person says, okay, I'll make some arrangements. And the other person goes, super, because they're busy. Now, the guy he's going to make the arrangements, no problem. He comes back and says, honey, I booked our vacation. He goes, great. What are we going to do? He goes, we're going salmon fishing up in Alaska. She goes, well, when I said vacation, I was thinking more like we go to Tahiti or something. Now, they didn't really find out from each other what they were planning as a vacation. Sounds simple enough, but you'd be surprised how it works in miscommunication times.
Mm-hmm.
So I have people say to me, oh, I remember I was telling you about that thing. I go, what thing? You got to listen. You got to refresh my memory and tell me what thing you're talking about. Even in a normal general conversation, somebody could say they're talking about the car, and all of a sudden they switch subjects and they're talking about the restaurant. So you go, wow, hey, great time. Well, remember that car we had when we were younger? We drove around that car. We went to the beach and everything. Well, that was fantastic. And that meal was fantastic. And I go, what meal? We were riding around in a car down the beach. What meal are we talking about? Oh, the one we went to last week. Went to that restaurant. And they just switch on you even. Sometimes they're going to go up. Sometimes they're going to go down. And sometimes they're going to go sideways. They're thinking good times in their mind. So they went from car and beach to restaurant meal. You got to keep track of these. Well, you've got to learn about these models. Mostly people talk about Milton model as being used mostly for, let's say, hypnosis. That's not necessarily true. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can throw some very specific things in there too. But it's really about noticing, one, what does the person want? What are they trying to accomplish? And what's in their language that's going to meet and match basically what's going to work in the hypnosis part. Both of those things are fun. They both interact together. They both have different, individually, both have different things that they can accomplish. But it's really a matter of going in between and using whatever you have to use in order to get the result. Mm-hmm. I look at companies. I look at companies, and they have things they have called it's their mission statement.
Yeah,
they're nice. They're very nice. They're too way up in the air, and the employees say, yeah, right, yep, sure, yep, I agree with that. But it doesn't necessarily always apply to, now I'm going to chunk down, to what are the action plans going on in order to reach the company's objectives. Mm-hmm. So these come into play. They're words. They're simply words. I don't know how else to put it. Mm-hmm. So you want to be able to be ambiguously specific and specifically ambiguous. Let me put it that way. Mm-hmm. If you could do those two things, you're on your way.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I love the meta model, the Milton model, especially when I'm working with salespeople, because so many salespeople don't actually listen to what the customers are saying, which is just classic. And then actually, using the Milton model, for me, things like embedded commands, embedded questions are so powerful when they're done properly. It's absolutely.
Yeah. I remember the question was actually, what's my favorite?
Yeah.
My favorite happens to be the ambiguities.
Yeah.
So, and the reason they're my favorite are because when you hear ambiguities, when you use ambiguities, number one, well, there's a few things about that. One is most of the time they have people laugh or at least giggle because ambiguities go to different places in the brain. Let me explain. My favorite ones are phonological ambiguities. And that's where words sound the same, may be spelled differently, may be spelled the same, but have different meaning. So like one of them would be right, and right. So you have right as in right-handed. Actually, right-handed here. Looks like left-handed to me on the screen though.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Wow, I'm going to run my own trance here. Okay.
I think I can get it, yeah.
You have right as in right-handed, right as in right wrong, right as in a ceremonial right, right as in a millwright. So, but the words are the same. I mean, they sound the same. When you use them in language, then they become somewhat funny. Now, let me tell you why funny is important. Funny is important because if you have a sense of humor, and I don't mean telling jokes. Jokes poke fun at people, classes of people, sexes, races. We're not talking about jokes. Jokes have a punchline to them. Whereas humor is different. It's about the language and what does the language do. I tell this one in the class. My dad passed away probably 20-something years ago. And after that, I went to my mom's house. Well, I was going there regularly anyway, but she wasn't going out. She was sitting home like this, I get there one day and I said, Mom, what are you doing? What are you doing sitting home like this? And she said to me, she goes, well, ever since I lost your father, I said, whoa, you haven't lost my father. You know exactly where he is for the first time in your life. Now, two things happened when I said that. One is she laughed. Okay. My mom was great with language. She understood ambiguities. She couldn't teach them, but she understood them and she laughed. Well, while she laughed, being Italian, she gave me what's known as, in Italian, it's called a scapolotto, which means usually it's a, bop or bop on the shoulder. She bopped me on the shoulder and she says, that's not funny. Now think about this. Mom says to me, that's not funny while she's laughing. The conscious response was, that's not funny. Her unconscious response was laughing. And I wanted her to laugh so she could laugh at the problem, because her sitting home was not going to bring him back. And she laughed. And I said, come on, let's go out. We went out and did some things. And then she started going out. So I used that ambiguity. I got loads of these, loads and loads and loads and loads of these. They're my favorite ones. The phonologicals are my favorite. Then there's things called syntactic ambiguities. You know, you probably, you know, these are things like you would take a verb, make it in transitive or transitive, and then put it before a noun or before a verb, you know, things like this, or, and it'll go like this. Like they said, I'm trying to think of, well, I don't want any really good ones, because I don't know what the mixed audience is here, but they were smoking jackets. And they were smoking jackets. Were they smoking jackets or were they smoking jackets? They were one in the book. One of the ones in the book is they were milking cows. Were they milking cows or were they milking cows? You know, things like this. And how it depends how you say it. Then there are scope ambiguities. Scope ambiguities are, there's a part of the sentence you're not sure how much of the entire sentence that phrase refers to. You know, some of my favorite ones, which is why I use them when I'm talking to people, is, you know, I shot an elephant in my pajamas. And of course, Groucho Marx, then he finishes it, because you can always interrupt it. And he says, how he got there, I'll never know, which made it even funnier yet. Because, you know, who was in whose pajamas? I used to use when I said, I washed the car with my mother-in-law. And, you know, so you're making different images in your mind as you hear that. And that makes humor. Now, why would I want to use humor? There are a few things. One, if you start to write out, and I mean write out ambiguities, I mean practice and write them out. Not just you got to say them. You got to create them, write them down, and say them. That's the way you start to get these in your brain. Is because what will happen is, because you don't know where they're going to go in the mind, in the brain, basically, you know, where they're going to end up searching through. They're going to do a transderivational search, that's for sure. And then what happens is, if they're in different parts, what it does is it tends to, because you know people who have a good sense of humor. And if you do, I'm going to ask you the question, okay? Are they easy to get along with? You go, yeah, of course, great. And I'm going to say, do you know people who just don't have a sense of humor at all? And are they flexible? And they go, no. I go, there's the difference right there. So by using ambiguities and practicing them, you build, ready for this, flexibility in your brain, because you tend to strengthen the corpus callosum. That's the little section that goes across both parts of the brain. I'll make it easy. And therefore, that's why some people can't come up with some answers right away, because they're thinking here, looking here, and the answer's over here on this side someplace. So you develop your own flexibility. You develop your own creativity. That's why NLP is so great. And everybody should learn NLP, but not to learn NLP and say, I'm using my NLP here. No. It's so that it just comes out naturally. That's the way to do it. My son, we didn't teach, his name is John Sebastian. We didn't teach him NLP. But on some weekends when we were teaching in New Jersey, and he was 3, 4, 5 years old, we'd bring him to the seminars. He'd sit in the back of the room and he'd play with his toys. We'd bring toys and things for him to play with. But I'm sure he was listening, because he's one of the best NLPers I know. I'm no joking around. I mean, this kid, when he was 21, somebody hired him to negotiate a contract for them with Coca-Cola, and he won. I mean, he's very talented, not because he's my son. He surprises me sometimes. So, but we didn't teach it to him. You know, in our minds, it's part of what we've become in our brain. We've redone our brain so that this just happens. Do we have moments? Of course we have moments. Maybe that's part of NLP, having a moment so you can bail out of it and know what to do next. I really don't know. So anybody and everybody should learn it. Chiropractors should learn it so they know what to say to somebody. You know, lawyers are, some of them are the worst. Again, with ambiguity things, you know, I was in court one time, and the guy, the attorney, was using ambiguities with me, but he didn't know how to use them right. He'd say to me things like, he said, can you tell me what you know about Tom Phillips? That wasn't the case, by the way. And I say, yes.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Because that's how I answered the question. I answered his question. Can you tell me about Tom Phillips? And I say, yes. And you say, well, and say, well, what? You go, are you going to tell me? You go, sure. And I'd wait. Now, was I messing with the attorney? Of course I was messing with the attorney. He wasn't my attorney. He was the other guy's attorney. And he finally looks at the judge and says, can you please ask John to answer the questions? And the judge looked at me because he missed it until I reminded him. The judge looked at me and said, John, can you please answer his questions? I said, Your Honor, with all due respect, I am answering his questions. He just doesn't know how to ask them. And the judge looked at me like, oh, are you really going to play this game with me? I just looked at him like, you should know better. It's called letter of the law. You only have to answer the question. You don't have to volunteer any more information. So, and then I even told him, he said, what was the one he said? Oh, he said, can you, I got to remember what it was now. But it was one where he almost had to refer back to the court reporter kind of thing. But he was kept using all these ambiguous things in his language. And he's not going to get good answers when he does that, plain and simple. Just doesn't happen, especially if you understand how language works. Should I have done that in court? Maybe not. But hey, I had a good time anyway, and the judge got it after all. Because he ended up telling the guy, you better ask, why don't you learn better questions? Why don't you learn how to ask better questions? Because John seems to know how to answer your questions, but you're not asking him the right questions. Yeah. So, but the language things are great. They're fun. And I found out years and years ago, if you can learn to really get a good sense of humor, and and let me tell you, a sense of humor doesn't mean telling jokes. It means, finding things out there that are really funnier than everything. It's just funny as hell. You see things on billboards and I laugh. So, and I found out as a result of doing that for quite a long time, if you can laugh at anything, you can laugh at everything. And if you can laugh at everything, guess what? The world is yours. You can do what you want, but you have to be able to have a sense of humor about it. I've teased people sometimes when I first meet them. I say, I have a thing I say. So if you ever get to meet me, you'll know what the answer should be, but I might change my response. I say to them, hey, how you doing? You staying out of trouble? And they go, yeah. And I go, well, that's not any fun, is it? And or they say, you staying out of trouble? And they go, hell no. And they go, all right, that's good to know. But that's my way of just getting to have a conversation with them. Mm-hmm. I had a guy, it was around Veterans Day. I was at a place and they had a delicatessen in there. And so people were ordering sandwiches and sitting down and having to eat. And there was a guy there, he had a Marine hat on, okay? And, U.S. Marines, and I love the veterans. I got to tell you, I love the veterans. And so I saw he was looking at the menu thing, and I went up to him and I said, hey, how you doing? I want to thank you for serving. He said, oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I said, let me buy you lunch. And he looked at me and he said, I'm no charity case. He said, I don't want anybody to buy me lunch. I'm no charity case. And I said, listen, Marine, I don't give a shit what you think. I'm going to sit down and put your menu down, pick out what you want, order it. I'm buying you lunch. Not only that, I'm going to sit right down next to you and eat it with you. I'm going to have my lunch and your lunch, and we're going to chat. And the guy just looked at me and didn't know what to do because nobody's ever talked to him that way, I would imagine, except maybe his spouse, who knows. And he cracked a smile and laughed. He said, all right, okay. And I had a great time with the guy. We must have had a 3-hour lunch just chatting and stuff. Talking to him. So how'd you do, man? Where'd you go? Was it good? Got memories you want to talk about? If you want to talk about it, man, let's talk about something else. Yeah, sometimes you got to, there's all kinds of ways. You want to learn to meet people, learn some NLP. Definitely. Just ask crazy, simple questions. It's crazy. I have a good time. I'm sorry. Life to me is just great. It really is.
That's cool. Yeah, you
don't want to meet my wife and start talking to her because she'll have you. No problem. I'll stop right there. Just don't look into her eyes.
Yeah, I think we know that. Well, those of us that know, we know that. So yeah, I like ambiguities too. So I guess, we're coming up to almost the 2-hour mark. So we've maybe got time for a few more questions. So guys, if you want to ask a question, now's the time to pop it in the chat box. One of the questions that came in prior to the webinar, John, was there are obviously quite a few managers out there, people in leadership positions. So how can I use NLP to motivate my staff when we get back to normal, whatever normal looks like?
Well, I have a surprise for you. You're not in charge of motivating your staff.
Okay, good answer.
I'll pause there for a moment. I know they went to school. They said, you're responsible for motivating your people. You're not. Give it up. You've got a couple of things to do. You can contribute to them wanting to work for you. I used to tell these, I use other webinars, I'll tell you the same thing here. I used to go to my bank, and I still go to my bank, but I used to go to my bank and ask a question. I wanted to predict the economy is what I was doing. I try to predict the economy for the next quarter. Couldn't predict the stock market per se, but I could predict the economy pretty well, within reason. I'd go to my bank and I'd ask the ladies, I go, what are people doing lately? Are they putting in or taking out? Are they putting or taking, basically? And they'd say, oh, they're putting. I go, oh, that's not good. If people are putting money in the bank because they want to save it, that's okay. It also means they're not spending it. If they're not spending it, guess what? The economy's going to go like this. If they said, oh, they're taking it, I go, cool. Some people go, well, yeah, they got to pay their bills. Well, that's okay. They're also going to go out and spend and buy things. They're not going to fool me. So that was what I had I still do good relationship with the ladies in the bank. Some of them I've known there for almost 30 years, which means they had to start when they were like 20, and they're still there, some of them. And I still go in there. It's like, hey, John, how you doing? Well, I still bring donuts now and stuff like that. They go, yeah, any Italian cookies? One time I brought cannolis. You would have thought what I brought. But I asked them a question one day. It was back in the 90s. I asked them a question. And I said, I'm doing a project, and I'm doing some research. So I wonder if you could answer a question for me. And they said, sure. I said, but don't answer all at once. Write your answer down because I don't want to interfere with each other's answers. It was like there were like three of them behind the cage, basically, the teller's cage. And I said, what would I have to do? I'm your boss. What would I have to do so that you would actually look forward to coming to work on Monday morning? And they all wrote down pretty much the same thing, not verbatim, but pretty much the same thing. And I said, what would I have to do? And they said, you just did it. And I said, what's that? And they said, you just asked me what I thought. I said, what? They said, you asked me for my opinion. And I said, oh. They said, nobody ever asks us our opinion. They just come down and go, no, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. They don't say, how do you think this will work? Do you think this will work? What do you think? How can we do something different? Blah, blah, blah. They said, nobody ever asks us. I said, oh. Now, I know why managers don't ask people because I was a manager once. I had 75 people reporting to me once. Okay, and that meant supervisors, managers, supervisors, operators, mechanics, engineers, whatever you want to call them. And people didn't want to ask employees for their opinion because they didn't want to have to deal with it. Isn't that a shame? So company would come to me once in a while. I worked for the one company and they came to me one time and said, we want to do an opinion survey. And I said, why? And he said, well, because we want to know people's opinions. I said, bull, you already know their opinions. Or you wouldn't be asking to do an opinion survey. So what is it you want to squash? Now, if you guys are consultants, I'm going to give this to you. Okay. This is a give me. This is a give me, right? Not give me, but I'm giving it to you. You can go out and make, I don't even want to predict how much money you can make with this. As soon as somebody company wants to do an opinion survey. I said, you already know that you have a problem. Otherwise you wouldn't want to do an opinion survey. He said, I'm going to suggest you do not do an opinion survey. They said, well, how are we going to find out we know some things, of course, but how are we going to know other things? I said, you want to know how to do that? They said, here. I charge them for this, by the way. I said, this is a $5,000 fix. They said, well, how much would an opinion survey be? I go, no. This is the opinion survey. And I'm only charging you 5 instead of 20 because I like you guys and you give me a lot of business. I said, tell you what, get different people, not a big gang, not 50 people. I don't like committee stuff. It gets out of hand. Go out and get different people from different, departments in the organization and go from the director level to the middle and down to the bottom. Get a few of them, get 20, 25 people and just say, we're doing something. We're thinking about having an opinion survey. What questions do you think we should have on there? And they said, then what? I go, you guys, once you know what the questions are, now you know what the problems are. You don't have to do the opinion survey. Mm-hmm. But now you better do something about the questions because you already know the answers. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, wow. I said, what? Why do you want to drag a company through an opinion survey when they know you're not going to do anything about it? Most companies do not do anything about it. Well, the one company I did work for, actually, they did an opinion survey. They wanted me to do it and to help them do it anyway. And so I said, okay, but we're going to do this as a training exercise, actually. We're going to do this training, and I did that. But the president was the one who wanted to do this. He was a young guy, by the way. He was 37. I think when he did this, he was 38. He was bright. This guy was brilliant. And when I explained to him about the opinion survey, he says, yeah, I know, but I want to get people used to talking about stuff. I really want to get it out now. I want to get what's going on. I said, fine, we'll do it. And so I made it part of, actually, it was a skills program too. Like we're going to do skills evaluations at the same time of different people in different jobs. Not specifically by name, but I turned it into a training survey as well. And so I said to him, what are you going to do with the answers? When you get the answer, when you get this opinion survey and you get the answers, and if this percentage doesn't like this percentage that, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. He said, I'm going to go out and I'm going to respond to every single question. I'm going to go out and get with people at every location in the country. It was a few locations. He said, I'm going to have a big breakfast meeting and I am going to answer those questions. I said, really? He said, yep. I said, I'm going with you. I want to make sure you do it. He said, fine, come on with me. So I got to travel around with the president, rent big Lincoln Continentals and stuff, best hotels and the best restaurants. But he did it. But here's the funny part. He got up and he would say, so one of the questions was, this was in the 80s, I feel very insecure, or I don't know, I don't feel that my job is very secured and that I'm going to have long-term employment. And so he answered that question. He said, so here's the question. He said, me too. I'm not secure in my job. I could be gone tomorrow. So you ought to be prepared for that. Keep your resume up to date. I'm not saying everybody's going to get fired or we're even moving in that direction. But you know what? You want me to answer the question because you're not secure in your job? I'm not either, and I'm the president. Board of directors can fire me anytime they want. So keep your resume up to date. I thought that was a fantastic answer because it addressed reality. So that whole thing is well, anyway. Depends on what you want to start asking people about in order to get information.
Okay, I like that. There's a question coming from Blairam, and I know Blairam sent this in before the webinar. It's interesting.
Sure.
I don't know if you can see in your chat box, but it says, Blairam wants to understand what the semantic prime is and how it relates to business decision strategy.
Okay. Semantic prime, first of all, I don't know that I would use it for business strategy necessarily. I don't know how I would use it in business strategy, although it certainly works in a lot of other cases. So semantic prime is what happens is when there are certain words that have a certain amount of density to them, which means they're applicable without being very relevant in a lot of different areas. Okay. I was watching the other day, there was people because we opened up some of the places down the beach, we actually call it down the shore here. In New Jersey, first you have to go down the shore so you can go to the beach. We're the only place in the world that does that. And I don't quite understand it. But I was driving down that way, okay, and I passed this woman in a convertible. And first I thought, wow, she's driving with her top down. But then I thought, it's a red convertible. Now, if I were to say to you alone, here, I know a guy. He goes to the park and likes to watch the children playing with their parents and going up and down on the sliding boards. But at the first thing that I said to you, if you go, he likes to watch, you had all kinds of different configurations going on inside your mind. Mm-hmm. Now, some of them may or may not have sexual connotations to them. It's not necessary. But there are certain words that have certain density, meaning they've already applied, not specifically, but you already got different, they're everyday language that goes to different parts, different places down in the brain, and not necessarily specifically relevant, so it keeps you guessing, unless you close it up, which I've done. That's what I did with the car, and that's what I did with the park. When I said, there's a guy I know he likes to watch. Now, if I just let it later, you start really coming up with all kinds of wild things. I'm trying to think of some other words, things like that, but they have a certain amount of density to them, but they don't mean anything specifically, but they have various and different meanings, and not in an ambiguous sort of a way necessarily, but I guess sort of ambiguous, but you just don't know. When my son was in school, he got in trouble one day, and this has ambiguities and some priming. The principal of the school called me up, said, your son's in my office, can you please come in here, blah, blah. It wasn't that nice about it either. And I went in and found out what happened. And my son even knew language back then. He must have been 8 years old. But what happened was the guy called me up, he said, your son threw a snowball at a teacher. My first answer to him was, wow, what did she do wrong to deserve that? Wow. And he said, and then he didn't use a good modal operator. He said, you have to come in here. I said, really? Okay, I'll be there. And I don't like being told what I have to do by somebody who doesn't have authority like that. Mm-hmm. And so I went in, and my son was sitting there, and I said, why is he still here instead of being in class? And he said, well, I told John that it seems like there was a miscommunication here. I go, really? Oh, wow, on whose part? And he skipped that part. He never answered my question. And I said to him, so what happened here? And I actually looked at my son. I said, what happened? He said, Dad, I did not throw a snowball at the teacher. I threw a snowball at some girl. I missed the girl and I hit the teacher. I thought, certainly is a miscommunication. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, the girls were chasing me around. I said, son, get used to that. And he said, and I was getting all sweaty. And I said, I want to stop chasing me around, blah, blah, blah. And he said, and they all stopped except this one girl. And I turned around and said to her, stop, just leave me alone. That she pushed me. So I pushed her back. And the teacher didn't see her push me. The teacher only saw me push her. So the teacher put me in timeout box. And I said, okay, well, you shouldn't have pushed the girl. I don't know what to tell you. I know you weren't thinking you're defending yourself, but come on. And he said, well, she went behind the teacher and went like this. I said, get used to that too, son. The girls will do that to you. And he said, so I picked up some snow, made a snowball. I threw the snowball at the girl. She ducked and I hit the teacher. And that's what happened. He said, great. Go back. Can you go back to class now? Principal said, sure. I like the principal, by the way. Don't get me wrong. The guy was a great guy. He just took a couple of missteps along the way. And I used an ambiguity that would also have some depthness to it when he said to me, he said, you know, your son has a problem. And I said, yes, it's apparent. And I paused. And I waited till I could detect that he was making the picture of me in his head. And I said, no. We'll have to talk about her next. And his eyes rolled around in his head. Now, I didn't want to do that necessarily to him, but I wanted to wake this guy up. Because when he said to me, he said, your son is a little bit too rebellious. And I said, meaning what? He said, well, you know, he likes to stand up for himself. I said, that's called standing up for himself. It's not called being rebellious unless you don't like him not following any of your rules. Well, what's the problem here? He said, well, he's a little too independent. He said, Let me ask you a question. And I use his first name. He hated when I used his first name because he'd call me John, but I had to call him Dr. Smith. That's not his real name. He say, he'll call me up. He go, hello, John. I go, what is it, Jeffrey? He go, my name is Dr. Smith. I said, no, it's not. Your parents did not name you doctor. I know your name. I even know your middle name, Jeffrey Joseph Smith. I saw it on your degree, on your wall. And he said, but people call me Dr. Smith. I go, well, I don't. I'm calling you. You want to call me John? I call you Jeffrey. That's the way it works. You want to call me, you want me to call you Dr. Smith? You call me Mr. La Valle. How's that? And I don't like being called Mr. La Valle. So I said to him, so let me ask you a question. So he's a little bit too independent. I like that qualifier there. And he said to me, I don't happen to think you're a great role model as a father. And I said, really? Wow. How many kids do you have? He goes, I don't have any kids. I said, what do you know about being a father? He said, what makes you think I'm not a good role model? He said, well, let's start with the long hair thing. I had a ponytail down in the middle of my back. And he goes, well, let's start with that ponytail. He says, it's so 80s. I said, 60s. I got a lot of experience in my head. I know I don't look that old, but trust me, I am. I was at Woodstock, I told him. Now let's go talk about this too independent thing, because there's a qualifier in there. He's too independent. How do you measure this? And I said, you teach your children to read? He said, of course. I said, can you read? He said, of course I can read. I have a doctorate. I said, yeah, that means you have a doctorate. Doesn't mean you can read. Can you comprehend what you read? He said, of course I can. I go, good. Let's go outside. He go, whoa, wait a minute. We're not going to have a fight going outside. I'm going to go outside in the hallway. I want to show you something. Took him outside his office. On his wall is a poster. You know what I said, read that to me, Jeffrey. He said, would you please call me Dr. Smith while we're in the hallway because people can hear what's going on? I said, fine. Dr. Smith, can you read that poster to me? And he goes, I go, no, out loud. I want to hear it. I want to hear the words come out. He goes, we promote independence in our children. I went, wait, can you read that again for me, please? He goes, we promote independence in our children. I go, does it say we promote a little bit of independence in our children? You know what the problem is, Jeffrey? My son can read and understand. So he figures it's okay to be independent. Come on. Now, independence could have a long, well, what does independence mean? You know, here we have the 4th of July. That's our Independence Day. Independence could also mean what's your personal preference to acting out on your own and doing things on your own without having to, be dependent upon other people. So I said to him, so maybe you want to think about that poster about we promote independence in our children. And he thought about it. He really did think about it. He's a good guy. Let me tell you why he's a great guy. We go to the high school's senior graduation, which they're skipping this year. They're not going to have them get all together, masks and all this crap. They're just going to let them graduate and whatever. But we go there because we give a scholarship scholarship to 2 kids. He is there every year. He was in grade school. He was in kindergarten. He managed the kindergarten, first, second, third grade. He'd go there every year to watch his kids graduate after all those years. And he had tears. The guy would have tears in his eyes. This was great. The guy's such a great, I'd see him and he'd go, oh, John, how you doing? I go, hey, I'm doing great, Dr. Smith. How you doing? You know, I still give him that little bit because there was people standing around. So semantic prime is, what can you do? What words can you use? You want to be careful, of course. If you look at a lot of TV commercials, I don't know about in the UK, of course, at least here in the US, they're getting a little, I don't want to say racy in terms of race, but racy in terms of sexy. They're using certain words or phrases that as you watch the commercial, you go, oh, that's naughty. But it's not naughty. It's on TV anyway. But it could be a perfume, you know. It could be something simple like, you know, I love when my girlfriend puts a special cologne, well, you know where. And you go, well, no, I don't know where, but now I really want to know. But that primes it. That's a word, semantic. That's a semantic prime that takes you going to other places in your mind. So that's semantic priming. I hope I've answered your question good enough, well enough anyway. It's worth looking into.
Mm-hmm. So John, I'm conscious of time. We've been going over for 2 hours now, and I really appreciate everything that you've said and the candid way in which you've answered the questions. And it's great to see you didn't take the Fifth Amendment on any of them. That's always good, I think. No.
I don't. No, that's criminal stuff. I don't. No, I've never been caught committing a crime. So.
Well, that's cool. So I just a couple of housekeeping things. So, ladies and gents, the video for this will be available as soon as we can. We'll email you as soon as it's been uploaded. You can log in and access it whenever you want to, once we've got that set up for you. We've obviously got the webinar with me next week. I'm going to run it slightly differently to tonight, but I will email you with details about that. If you've got questions you want to ask me next week, then fire those in. And obviously, we've got Richard on the 20th of June. So if you've got questions to ask Dr. Bandler, I'd really suggest you get in, because it's a golden opportunity to kind of hear, you know, straight from the horse's mouth about NLP and NLP and business. And again, you know, Richard's been there, he's done it, he's got the t-shirt, he's absolutely incredible. So make sure you use that opportunity. It's just a great one to kind of get stuck into. If you really like what you've heard tonight and you like what you hear next week and what you hear with Richard, I am running a business practitioner course online at the end of this month. I'll send you some more details about that. We've got 30 places. We've sold about 10, so there's a few to go.
Oh, stop.
Yeah.
I'll take care of this part for you.
Yeah.
Relax.
That's cool.
If you have not seen or experienced Richard Bandler, you definitely do not want to miss that. Guaranteed, okay? You cannot miss. Richard's great. I've been working with Richard for 30, I don't even know how many years. I've lost track of how many years because it doesn't really matter, okay? And I didn't just train with Richard, just so you know. I learned most of the things I learned with how to apply things with, you know, from Richard, as opposed to just using techniques. But here, I'm going to do the shout out, okay? This guy, let me tell you about Tom Phillips. I'm going to tell you some secrets now, okay? Things that most people don't know, because I know people that know him, right? This guy is a stand-up guy, okay? He gets stuff done. If he says he's going to do something, he does it. That counts for a whole lot of things. He helps us. He assists with us in London. He's been helping us sometimes out in Orlando, okay? He does what he says he's going to do. He gets stuff done. He knows a lot about business. And I know he's going to run a program pretty soon, a business prac program or a business master prac thing, okay? He knows what he's doing. He's been running businesses. No problem. He's been running business. I've been watching his business grow. I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to say it, okay? When I first met Tom, I thought, what does this guy do? I found out what Tom does. Tom does a whole lot of things. Many things. I just found out just the other day that he works with the NHS. I didn't even know that. Now I have to call some people I know in the NHS and find out more things about Tom. You don't want to miss working with Tom. You don't want to miss training with Tom. Believe me, I'm going to tell you this, okay? So I know he wants to tell you about the programs. He's going to be running a program. You don't want to miss it. Serious. I don't recommend a whole lot of people very easily like this, especially with a group of people. So I'm straight up. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm not joking around. Tom's a great guy, and he's a great trainer, all right? So that's enough. Thank you so much.
John, thank you very, very much. I will speak to you soon. Thank you, ladies and gents.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch, and I'll catch you next week. Cheers now, guys. Bye-bye.